Spotify charts somehow
They need us. We topped it. We topped all the charts.
It's wild. So the Spotify film and TV charts, we've this week, the week we're recording, you guys will see this a few weeks later, or listen to it. And we were on the Spotify charts for film and TV this week, 44 and then 34 and then 26.
Yeah.
We got all at 26 on the film and TV charts. That is mind blowing to me. Tariq and I were like ready to like do this for months before we saw any sort of
we've had multiple conversations like, I just think it would be cool. You do it. I'm willing to do it for a couple months before any results happen. And then like week 2.
The response and the support has been like overwhelmingly cool. We were excited. You know, we knew a lot of our audience would come listen to us, but we didn't think we would get this much support to the point where we're like on the Spotify charts, which is kind of mind-blowing. So we got this really amazing write-up on CBR about the whole podcast, which was so cool to see. Just like someone writing about our podcast that we didn't think would get any attention. And it's like a really nice write-up.
It's so nice.
It's really cool. Yeah, we'll link that on Twitter and in the description here and all that stuff, so you guys can check it out. But it was a really nice write-up. And it's really exciting. Like, this has been really cool and overwhelmingly awesome to see the support so far. And we're gonna keep breaking down cartoons that curse for you. I'm really excited.
Cartoons that say horrible words. I didn't even, I'll keep, so everything that happens with the podcast, I always find a way to wake up to it. I always find a way to, I woke up to the article and I woke up.
I'm like 3 hours behind you.
You are. And I thought about this today or yesterday. I was like, he has to be up at like 8 in the morning by the time you send it.
My internal clock has changed a lot since I got animals who decide I need to get up when they get up.
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah. I understand that. Yeah. Okay.
Speaking of podcasts, though, the funny thing about this podcast was that when Tariq and I started talking about it, we initially were like, maybe we should talk about King of the Hill. We love King of the Hill so much.
Right. Yeah.
We were like, let's do a King of the Hill podcast. Then we kind of did a little research and we discovered that there are a handful of King of the Hill podcasts out there. And so I remember, Tariq, I don't think I even told you this, but after we recorded our first episode, right after, I went and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go listen to some of these King of the Hill podcasts and see what they were like when they started. Some of these other similar podcasts. And I listened to the first episode of the Ho Yeah podcast.
Which is the best name out of any King of the Hill podcast.
Incredible name. A perfect podcast name for King of the Hill. And the funniest thing about listening to that first episode is that my initial thought was like, I was like, oh, I'll listen to their very first episode. I'm sure we're like, we'll see how they did in their first episode comparable to how we did in our first episode. And listening to their first episode, I was like, oh, they're really good at this already.
Oh.
they're so instantly good. And I was like, man, maybe we need to redo our first episode. They were so great. But I started listening to the Ho Yeah podcast. And I think I want to like highly recommend the Ho Yeah podcast to you. I've actually gotten in touch with them and we've sort of become internet friends. They watched one of my King of the Hill videos and then did a whole episode of the podcast about what I talked about in that video. But they mostly cover the show episode by episode. And they're so charismatic. There's just two really funny women who love King of the Hill, and they have such a good friendship, and they're so charismatic, and like their love for the show is infectious in a way. And so I just want to plug that show for anyone who's waiting for us to talk about King of the Hill. Go listen to Ho Yeah until we do. It's a really great King of the Hill podcast. And it's like, I probably listen to 5 podcasts total on rotation, and that is one of them. It's really good. So highly recommend checking out Ho Yeah.
Some good King of the Hill content to hold you over until we talk about the Good Family, because that's coming.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about Beavis and Butthead, and then we're gonna skip King of the Hill, and then we're gonna talk about the Good Family. And then we're gonna
go back and do Beavis and Butthead Do America.
Yep. And then we'll do the reboot season, and then we'll go back and we'll cover The Good Family a second time.
Right. And then we'll do Silicon Valley.
Yep. And you know what? Maybe we'll do Office Space. Why not? Office Space rules. It's not a cartoon, but it's going to be fun.
Anything but.
All right. And on that note, let's cue the theme song.
Oh, yeah.
I've been watching them for years. It's always been something that fit with all the animated characters that's doing their own bits. With a fry who's in the future and a family guy that sucks. With a father from a hill, a burger family runs a month. The show inspires is the same guy, except he totally says and diverse.
Let's watch cartoons that curse.
Yeah, that's bananas.
That's rough.
What the f*** is up, everybody? Welcome to Cartoons That Curse. My name's Johnny. I'm here with my co-host, Tariq. You just did that to the camera, not realizing that a lot of our listeners only listen to this. So you just
right.
went, that was your introduction for the podcast.
Okay. This is a strain podcast. I had to strain to watch season 2.
Not everyone's watching us
for 10 episodes.
You're right. I'm not used to being on screen. I just kind of I'm doing the
You're usually a tune.
Right. Yeah, you know. They would have saw it, but actually they wouldn't have saw it because everybody listens to my videos. Hey, we have a guest. Who is this?
Yeah.
It's your boy, Man of 1,000 Thoughts. That's MANN. I run the YouTube channel, Man of 1,000 Thoughts. I review cartoons and cartoon accessories, and I have a loud voice in my head that just loves animation. I talk everything toon, nothing but tunes. And every now and then dip into some other type of media if I feel like it.
There we go. That was pretty smooth.
He's got 1,000 thoughts on everything he talks about.
Yep,
that's right.
1,000 thoughts for 1,000 topics.
We're so stoked to have you on today, man. You're our second ever guest.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Rick and Morty season 2, which awesome. I'm really excited to talk about.
Season 2 supremacy.
Yeah,
it's like the best one.
It's so funny going back to season 2 because I've seen season 2 prior to being here like twice, and like those are like it was. I always really liked. I think I liked it the most because I remember the more jokes from it. But some of the stuff my mind somehow got played by itself, thinking, wait, I thought that was a season 3 thing. It's like, no, that happened.
All right, yeah.
It's like, dang.
I feel you.
I don't know if that speaks volumes to the quality of season 3 that I'm confusing season 2.
Right. Well, we'll talk about season 3 next week, which I'm excited to do. So season 2 is interesting because like Rick and Morty was kind of it was a pretty solid success for Adult Swim right off the bat, and after the first half of season 1, which I believe ended in January 2014, they announced season 2 was a go, and then they put the show on hiatus immediately for a couple months. They were like, hey, here's the news, we're not going to put any more Rick and Mortys out for a couple months, but season 2 is coming, we promise. So that was kind of how they broke the news. But that was, but obviously at this point, we know it is a monumental success to the point where they had one of the biggest pickups in television history of 70 episodes at once, which if I'm not mistaken, the only thing that's ever done more than that, I think, is some of those Tyler Perry shows where he sold like outrageous numbers of episodes at once.
I mean, niggas love Tyler Perry for some reason.
If those shows are affordable to make.
Of course they're affordable. He writes all the scripts. He doesn't have a writer's room, so it's like, we only have to pay the one black man for it. Hell yes, and we only have to deal with one black man to.
He just puts the costume on and does everything. It's pretty.
I will say he was. He's a really smart businessman because he built his own studios and he bought all of the equipment he needs. So like when they basically calculate how much it costs to make those shows, it's like he owns the means to make all of it. So that's the way that he can get those huge pickups because there's no other production on the planet that works that way. So he gets like 200 episode pickups for his sitcoms, which
So
is
fucking nuts.
it's just crazy.
Just gross.
But anyways, nice little Tyler Perry tangent. We're going to talk about Rick and Morty season 2. So, season 2 began, I think, in 2015 was when it came back, which is like a pretty reasonable break between season 1 and 2, which is not the norm anymore. they take a long time normally.
Right.
And it picks up with the first episode 201, A Rickle in Time, which picks up exactly where the season finale of season 1 left off, and deals with the aftermath and like fallout from the events of the finale. And so this is basically the episode where Rick, Morty, and Summer, they break time into a bunch of parallel events that they have to resync. It's a really cool concept on a sci-fi level. Also a very funny episode. What do you guys think about A Rickle in Time?
How'd you go ahead, man?
Going back on revisit, I was like, God damn, this is like so funny. like I remember really enjoying that episode like a lot, but then rewatching it again, it's like, damn, I really enjoy it like a lot more, because it like really hits you in the face with how much they've kind of expanded themselves with from season 1, because I remember like you were mentioning like when you were watching season 1, like they were constantly doing just parodies of movies and shit, like the Nightmare Fred guy or something.
Yeah, that episode was a combination. That episode
Terry.
was a combination Inception, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Planet of the Apes parody all rolled into one.
Right. And that's the second one.
Right, and that was just sort of things like they just said, okay, we're like we learn our best episodes are when we're just not doing parodies, and maybe every now and then it's a snide comment about some type of pop culture shit, and with A Rickle in Time, they're just like, we're diving head first, we're going right into this crazy concept of literally somehow splitting reality because of unassuredness, like because one part of your brain is just unsure of something, so reality has to split just to compensate for that. It's like, okay, and you're on board because you're wondering how do you play with this idea, because that's something I haven't really seen before. The way they did it, it's a little disorienting the first time you see it, but you get used to it as you go along, because it's like, because they have the double speak, but they also have like two different sentences going on, even though they ultimately mean the same thing, so you still get the gist of it. So it's kind of I don't know, it's like a nice touch that they know it's like, yeah, there's a difference between these speech patterns, but there is very much, they're just saying the same thing. You don't need to hear exactly each individual line.
It's really impressive execution, because it's really like you basically, there's some moments where there's 4 things happening at once, and you're kind of having to pay attention to all 4, and they do a really impressive job managing to like allow you to understand what's happening even in all 4, despite the fact that it's like 4 different screens at once. It's a hard thing to execute, and they did a really good job with it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think because I remember, well, first and foremost, like Man said, this episode is like really, really funny, and I think it's funnier. This one episode, I think, is funnier than the entire first season. Like, I got more audible laughs out of this one than I did the entire time watching the first season, and I think the comedy finally caught up to the concepts. Because my thing about this show in the first season was that it has concepts that I know are funny, concepts that I know are hilarious, that like if I were in a room with a bunch of friends and I said, hey, what if this happens, I know everybody would laugh. Like, it's one of those things where like those concepts are just that funny, but for some reason the way that they were executing it wasn't making me laugh. Like, for some reason I didn't think any of it was bad, but it just wasn't hitting a certain medium for me. But I feel like this one got it, and I feel like this one is just, it's really, really funny. And it's a great concept, and it's a funny concept. To have a bunch of teenagers and tell them that they have to be certain in order to
Yeah.
fix time, which is just not gonna happen. Yeah, and it has a great Keegan-Michael Key performance. He runs this episode. It's so funny.
Oh my god. He's one of the funniest comedic actors on the planet. He is just and he's so good in this show. And I feel like they just gave him the room to be like be as big and bombastic as you possibly can be in this performance. It's so fun. I love that character. I don't even know his name, but it's such like the time,
it's so good, yeah.
top or whatever he is. Yeah, he's so funny.
Yeah, that performance was one of the biggest things that stuck out to me when I first watched it, because I'm just thinking about this bombastic guy who they basically just call a testicle the whole time.
Right, yeah.
And he's just he's just doing as hard of a black voice as he can, and doing so much weird cursing. It's like shut your ass and asses off.
Right.
Shit,
what was that?
It's like, what? It's like, you stupid ass dummy, monkey ass dummy. So some shit.
Yeah.
What? It's basically it's kind of like how you imagine a child would, when they just learn the concept of cursing or being able to curse. They're just saying as many curse words as they can, even if it's it makes zero sense. But somehow it works here because it's he's doing it with such a strong black accent and as a full grown man. So it's just really hilarious how
this
the
execution
of it.
This episode has 2 bits that kill me, and one of them is because of him. It's the tag at the end where it's him and Jordan Peele, and he says, "You know how much time has passed the dinosaurs?"
So good.
I think that's really funny.
This shit was hilarious.
So there's that, and then there's a joke early on. It's in the first scene. It's the joke right before the cold open where Rick makes some reference and Summer and Morty laugh. And he's like, "Oh yeah, you like that? So while I made it up, doesn't even exist. You don't even get it. You really are your father's children."
Yeah.
He's like, "Don't be sheep."
Yeah.
Right?
That's such a good joke. Going back to the tag, I love that they were just well, let's just bring in Jordan Peele and make this just a little Key and Peele bit, because their chemistry works so good. They play off each other so well. And they were like, well, let's just let them be these time cops arguing about where they need to meet in time.
Right,
and it's just I could watch a whole show of them. They're obviously
really
because they are so great together. But honestly, if we're talking potential spin-offs for Rick and Morty, I would watch a show that was those two fixing time.
Them two being able to yell at each other like that is funnier. I mean, they're still funny when they do what I'm about to say, but them doing that and being able to yell at each other with whatever language they want is funnier than them in Toy Story 4. Where they just have to be, they're still really funny, but they have to be cutesy. Yeah, because they are really funny in Toy Story 4, but they're relentlessly funny in that tag at the end of that episode.
Yeah, they very much, it just feels like these two were, I want to say, were they told to improvise? Because some of it feels like they either came up with a lot of that stuff themselves, to say shit you know how much time has passed the dinosaur?
So funny.
I have a feeling that so much of this show, just because of the nature of so much of the show, it seems to be improvised. I'm sure when they get great improvisational actors in that, they're just argue, just do here's what we need out of this scene.
Right.
Do your thing. And it's I think it really shines through how good they are together in that sequence. I think I said this to you guys the other day, but I love Jordan Peele's horror films, but I wish we were getting a Key and Peele movie every couple of years, because Keanu was so funny. And
Keanu was really funny.
It's really funny. And I just miss them comedically, being able to watch them comedically any week because Key and Peele was on.
Right.
But honestly, I'm not gonna complain, because Jordan Peele's a good filmmaker, and I like watching his movies.
And they're both doing. I won't say they're doing really funny stuff, but they're both doing really good stuff, and they still end up together somehow, sometime.
Yeah,
in Toy Story 4 or something like that. So it's cool.
One of my favorite clips ever was Keegan-Michael Key's reaction to Jordan Peele winning his Oscar, and he's just so genuinely stoked for his friend, and it's like an infectious level of like how excited he is for his friend. It's really cool. The other thing I want to go back to is because you were talking about with this episode how the premise is so focused around like needing teenagers to be sure of themselves in the moment.
Right.
But the funny and interesting thing about what messes it up is that it's actually Rick. It's actually Rick being unsure of himself that messes it up because one Morty decides to call Rick out for something that Rick gets insecure about, and that sends time out of sync, which I think is actually an important character moment for Rick, because a lot of this season is kind of, and I guess with the season finale of season 1 is sort of the reveal that, yeah, Rick feels like he's got it together all the time and he really understands everything that's going on, but maybe there's like a deeper pain and insecurity that he's feeling and that he's masking the whole time. And I think this is a pretty smart, small, but important beat that showcases that and is the inciting incident for the time problem.
Oh yeah. No, I agree, because I think, I don't know, it's been a while. It's been a while since I've seen the 3rd season, but I remember that being like a weird kind of issue I had with it. Was that like, because I think this season is like a happy medium, but I think by the 3rd season, Rick is just like a fucking superhuman, like that, like can't do anything wrong and knows everything and knows what's gonna happen before the person that even does the thing even thinks about doing the thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
because he ends up having that fight with a robot bird person, but he's got all these contingency plans upon contingency plans to keep himself alive in that hyper fight. And it's like, okay, he's a god because he should have been dead.
Right.
Whereas you look back on season 2, it's like, oh, he's mortal. Like this, like he literally falls for shit where it's like, okay, you should have seen that coming, but he didn't. Like we'll probably get into it later, but like in the Purge episode, it's like, oh, you got tricked by a teenage girl. How the fuck did that happen?
Yeah, like watching that now in like knowing the context of what comes later, we are going to talk about it later, but knowing the context of what comes later, it is kind of like, oh, this is still a person. You know what I mean? Like, like
exactly.
They made sure to give him, he wasn't what's the word I'm looking for? Immune. He wasn't like immune to like all the stuff that was going on around him. And I think that's what made him a human. And I think that's what made when he comes out on top and actually wins, I think that's what made it fun. And that's what made it like fun to watch and everything like that. And this episode is a good example of that, because he messes it up and he's really close to just like not getting it back. But then they kind of stumble upon a better way to go about it, and it works out in the end, and it's fun to watch that way. You know what I mean? Instead of just going like, Rick's got it, he's got everything.
Yeah,
like, that's not really super fun.
That is part of the thing with like Rick and Morty these days with season 3 and 4. Although I do still think that they like are able to, I still think they're able to interestingly explore his character from that new perspective of like, oh, he is invulnerable to anything because he's nearly a god. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like they still explore him in interesting ways, but there's a lack of like stakes. There's a lack of stakes later, because it's just like, well, Rick could get out of this. Rick's going to get out of this. He gets out of everything. But with that being said, let's move on to 202, Mortynight Run, the episode where Morty saves this gas creature played by Jermaine Clement from being assassinated by what's his name? Crimbopulous Michael. 2 really good guest stars, Jermaine Clement and Andy Daly plays Crimbopulous Michael, who is so funny. I was like, oh, here I go killing again.
Here I go killing. That is so funny.
Killing again. Like, he's just so excited just to be murdering a bunch of people. It's like, Jesus, like, how can you be that excited for this?
That's a great line.
It's so, and especially in its delivery, like he is, it's just, it's such it feels like such a genuine, like, oh, here I go. Gonna kill him. So funny. I really like, so the thing I wrote down is that I really like how this episode challenges Morty. And I feel like this season starts to do that in different ways, because you're starting to see the beginning of Morty not always just going along with what Rick wants to do.
Right.
Even when Rick is like, this is a bad idea, Morty's like, I'm going to do this thing because I feel strongly about it. And
Right.
in the end of this episode, he learns that saving this gas creature was ultimately a terrible decision because it's going to like commit genocide. You know, he's like, oh shit, I'm going to be responsible for this. So now I have to kill this gas creature to save all of these people.
Right.
And it's a cool, I like how it's like, obviously season 1 challenges Morty's worldview a lot, especially with like Love Rick Potion number 9, when he has to replace his self in another universe. But this season sort of sets up that he's like starting to get used to these sci-fi adventures with Rick, and he's starting to feel more comfortable in them. And then this is like him exploring his new comfort in this new type of lifestyle, and then that challenging him even further.
Right.
Which is cool. There's good character work in this season.
Yeah, I see in this season I see a lot of, I noticed it around the back end, but there's a lot of Morty trying to do the right thing. Like Rick will be really abrasive about something and Morty's like, no, we have to do, this is the right thing to do. Like we can't just let this happen to these people. And the episode, like the show is just kind of against that type of shit. It's just kind of what it seems like. Cause like every time Morty's like, no, this is the right thing to do, the curtain pulls back and says, no, actually, my G, that was the wrong thing to do. And this is going to happen to you guys now. And it's all because you didn't listen to Burrow. Like,
right.
And I think what's really interesting about this one is that Morty internalizes what happens at the end when he realizes that he wasn't doing the right thing the whole time. And he never tells Rick. And you would think, like, okay, if they would have did this later, maybe it would have been a thing where Rick knew that, like, yeah, nah, I knew this was gonna happen, yada yada yada. But like, nah, he's oblivious to it, and he kind of just remains oblivious to it, and they just kind of go and pick Jerry up. You know what I mean? Right. But I think that's an interesting character thing for Morty, where like, if something like that happens, and you're not gonna instantly start to speak about it, right? That's something you're going to internalize because you have a lot to think about after that. You have a lot of thinking to do with your intentions and your morals and everything like that, because when you think he thought he was saving someone the entire time, he thought he was saving the innocent. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think that stuff is interesting. I think they do it well here.
Yeah,
me too.
I did. That's just sort of the thing, is that this, like, they very much make it clear. It's like Morty is absolutely in the wrong here, and they like really hammer that in with how much Rick is like being a douchebag, like a total prick to him. Like he like straight up called him a like insecure little bitch, right to his face.
Right. But the episode puts you in Morty's shoes, so you're just kind of looking at Rick like, fam, what are you doing? Like, why? Yeah, exactly. What's wrong?
Exactly. Like, you're in Morty's shoes for the most part, but on rewatch, you're like, I'm kind of more in Rick's shoes, because I'm like, yeah, kid, what the fuck are you doing? Like you didn't need to. No one told you to do this, and yet you're doing it. And then you find out it's like, oh yeah, you almost doomed humanity or all of life in your universe because you wanted to be a fucking good guy, because you want to think you're a good person, which kind of comes back into play later on in the season with the whole I'm a good person shit twice even. And it's like, that's just sort of that thing that they wanted to basically say. It's like, not all the time do you need to be the good guy. Like, not all the time, like, you need to be out there trying to do the right thing, because sometimes it's like, you don't know everything. You really, really don't know what's going to happen. You don't know why this guy needs to commit this assassination.
Yeah. Like, and the interesting thing about that too is like, even though Rick was like, why are you doing this? I feel like Rick's perspective was more like, this is a hassle that we don't need to deal with.
Right. Exactly.
And because like, he doesn't know or learn what that guy was going to do.
Right.
He mostly is just like, all right, fine, Morty, we'll do your dumb thing, but this is annoying. I want to go to Blips and Chits. You know, I want to go play games at Blips and Chits. So it's interesting because like, I feel like Rick's coming at this from an apathetic perspective, but mostly because you feel like it kind of feels like his history of dealing with the multiverse has beaten this apathy into him, where he's just like, we can't try to do something about everything because the universe is random and chaotic, and even when you're trying to do the right thing, you might not be. He's most so
Exactly.
it's kind of made him not care for that reason.
Exactly.
Which is cool. That's good character work. Should we talk about Jerry Barry though?
Yeah, we should.
Jerry
I
Barry.
really, really like the fact that all of the Jerrys are excited to fix the picture settings on the television. I think that's really funny. That is such a Jerry thing to be happy about.
Exactly. It's funny because like the first season, I mean the second season, like really kind of like the first half of it more or less establishes like, yeah, Jerry's kind of a loser and a bit pathetic here and there. But it's like later on, you're like, God, I can't stand Jerry. I see why everyone picks on you. Like before you were just boring, but now it's like you are an awful person. Like you are genuinely terrible.
Jerry definitely sucks in the first season because there is a lot of the projecting is still there. But the thing about, I wouldn't say that Jerry's in the background, but like it isn't like focused on as heavy as it is here. To the point where like, a lot of later as the show goes on, a lot of the moving pieces that Rick tries to put into play always kind of get intercepted by Jerry, intentionally so or not. And it's something that he has to deal with. And it's something that in turn the audience has to deal with. And I mean, like, Jerry just kind of wants the best for his family and his kid, but it kind of doesn't seem that way. It kind of seems like Jerry wants the best for himself, and in tangent that includes his family and his kid. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like that. And they do a good job showing that, so you don't exactly root for him, because everybody who's ever watched the show is in agreement that Jerry is awful. Like even if you feel bad for him in a split second for whatever reason, he does something that makes you go, come on, all right.
Exactly.
He's a pathetic human. He's a very pathetic person.
Right. And at one point you kind of want, like when you with the Jerry Barry thing, like when you get towards closer to the end and you find out it's like, oh yeah, these Jerrys are the ones whose Ricks and Mortys never came back for them.
Right.
It's like you come back and think about it because you've seen the whole season, you realize, oh yeah, this Jerry probably would have been one of those at one point. Maybe. Was probably going to be one of those, because it's like because it's like Jerry is just that awful, because for no reason it's like he's selfish. He's a very selfish guy, and like you said, Tariq, anything that he does is more like if it helps somebody, it's only because it helped. It's kind of like it just so happened to help some other people.
Right, exactly. If it doesn't benefit him somehow, it doesn't really matter. Like even, he tries to do sweet stuff with Beth, right, every once in a while. But I think the stuff with Beth is him trying to keep his marriage, not more so, hey, I really, really care about Beth. I don't know. There's an episode later that actually kind of got me thinking about some stuff that might disprove that. But I don't know. He's more of a complex character to talk about than I think they let on, because you kind of want to figure out what his motivations are just by the way he acts and the way he treats everyone.
Right. It's interesting because so the Jerry Barry thing, to me, one of the things I like most about it is that it's the kind of world building that I like most in Rick and Morty, which is because obviously multiverse stuff is fun. Like that's fun world building, but also it makes it so that there's infinite possibilities. So to a degree, it's a lot to keep track of. Like because anything can happen in any different dimension. You know what I mean? So that world building to me is a little overwhelming, to the point where it's like, well, why even keep track? Anything can happen in any dimension. You know what I mean? But the world building in Rick and Morty that I love is the multiversal stuff that deals with Ricks and Mortys and Jerrys. You know what I mean? It's like So basically creating this Jerry Barry situation, it builds out the world from the Rick and Morty perspective of the multiverse, where you have this Citadel of Ricks. So like we learned about the Citadel of Ricks last season. We saw all of these different Ricks and all these different Mortys, and how ours are unique because they have this whole society of Ricks and Mortys because they know that they are like Rick is like one of the superior people in the universe or whatever. You know, he's on this different level. So to me, it's really interesting from that world building perspective, because this is the kind of stuff that like any, you know, there's a lot of shows that could do multiversal stuff, but this is the aspect of multiversal world building that you don't see anything else even conceive of. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, if there's a million Ricks and Mortys, we have to deal with what are those Ricks and Mortys? How are they dealing with like navigating the multiverse as like a collective? And one of them created Jerry Barry to like, there's an economy built around Ricks and Mortys.
Right. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy how interesting it can get. And then the other thing I want to talk about real quick, which I mentioned, I told you guys I would figure out when we were watching this.
Oh, right. You did say that.
This will be a little tangent, and we'll get back to it in a couple episodes because it connects to another episode too. But there is an implication in this episode that we follow a different Rick and Morty than usual. And I tracked it. I rewatched it. I figured it all out. So when Rick and Morty drop off Jerry, we see on the forum that they're checking off that Rick and Morty are from Earth C-137, which we know to be the main Rick and Morty that we follow in this show. C-137 Rick and Morty. They also receive, right after they do it, ticket that says 5126 on it. So they receive the Jerry ticket that says 5126. At the end of the episode, after we followed a Rick and Morty for the whole episode, they get back and they try to get their Jerry. And then another Rick and Morty walk up and say, wait, do you have 5126? Holding up a ticket, implying that they have 5126. And then they give that Jerry back to that Rick and Morty. So the implication is that the Rick and Morty we followed the whole episode after the cold open, the ones who were at Blips and Chits, the one who blew up, who killed the gas creature and all that stuff, that they are potentially a different Rick and Morty than C-137, which is interesting because it makes you, it kind of draws into question like any episode that doesn't explicitly state that they are from C-137 or doesn't connect to another episode that states they're C-137 conceivably could be a different Rick and Morty, which is kind of crazy.
It's pretty wild. It kind of gives them the liberty to do whatever they want, though. You know what I mean? Like, not really lock down any kind of set in stone continuity.
If I'm not mistaken, that's how they do the comic books too. I think the comic books follow a different Rick and Morty from a different universe, and they're just like, that's just how they write it off, which is smart. It's all built in.
Which is really smart.
We'll get back to this in a couple episodes because there's one other connection that I'll talk about. But let's move on to 203. Autoerotic Assimilation. This is the one where Rick reconnects with his ex Unity, who is a Borg-like collective, a hive mind, if you will.
Yeah.
This episode rules. This is a really good episode. It's really funny. What do you guys think about this one?
I like this one. I like this one a lot. I think this one is really funny. And I like everything they do on the planet. I like the fact that the planet's name is Unity. Because not because of my mid-roll. Actually, it's actually exactly because of my mid-roll song. But yeah, I like this one a lot. I did want to ask, the way this one ends,
with like Rick almost killing himself.
Yeah. And I was gonna ask, do you guys feel like in the context of the episode, do you feel like that is earned? Because I feel like it is a good moment, but do you feel like in this story, in comparison to literally everything else that's happened, like this is the one they chose to put that ending, and do you feel like that's earned?
I think it's, you know what, I'll go to bat for it. I think in a way it is, because this is one of the only times in the whole show that we've seen this Rick actively pursuing some sort of connection with another being outside of just adventuring with Morty. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
We've seen, this is the first time that he is himself, like putting himself out there and being like, oh, unity, let's do all this stuff together, let's party together, let's be together and all that stuff. And he's ignoring the rest of his, everything else for it.
Right.
And then he's effectively rejected at the end. They're just like, this is not healthy, I'm out. So to me, this is like the only instance in the show where we see Rick, so at least to this point, this is the only instance where we see Rick like actively putting himself out there for something and not being able to get it or have it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And especially because that's just on a personal connection level. We don't really see him try to connect with anybody. So it's like, it feels like it's a lot for this character to put himself out there like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It did, that being said, it did, I feel like the moment feels heavier than you're expecting after this episode. Maybe that's just the nature of Rick and Morty. Things are so silly until they're not,
I feel like they try, because that's the thing. When I was watching the episode, it feels like they're trying to play catch up so that they can get to that point. It's something that I noticed that some shows and some films do, where like, yeah, they wanna be really fun and be really funny, be really lighthearted, but they know they want a very poignant ending. So they'll, at a certain point in the episode, they'll try to slowly snap something to make it kind of ease into it. And I think the way that they do it here is that they try to have the notes hanging all over the planet and Rick reads them and everything like that about what Unity's saying to him. And I do feel like what Unity is saying is very thought-provoking because it is kind of like a double entendre. It is pretty layered where they're just saying like, well, you can't change, which can mean two things. It can mean like, oh, he can't physically change, or it's like, oh, he can't like internally change. He's always going to be the same person. And I think that that is them trying to switch the tone so we would be more welcoming to that ending. But I don't want to say it doesn't succeed because this is a really good episode. It's a great episode. And I think it's really funny. I think it's really fun. Yeah. And I do think everything in that note is really thought-provoking. And I think even the thing at the end is extremely thought-provoking. Isolated. I don't know. I do think you're right though. I think for the character that they built up and the character that we've been following, this is kind of difficult for him.
I would say it succeeds because if you look further on, you start noticing Rick. It feels like at the first we start off with Rick sort of, more happy, a bit more up, like a bit more happy, at least. Sure, he's still a cynical asshole, but it does feel like he's more of he's kind of started giving up a bit on his sense of caring because by the finale, it is a matter of like he really feels like, yeah, I don't want to weaken myself anymore because I every time if I leave myself vulnerable, I get hurt and I'm tired of doing that.
Yeah, I guess if you think of it in totality, especially in comparison to the finale.
Yeah, it's like one of those really strong moments because it's a guy who basically does kind of have a god complex finally be brought down to realize, I brought out the worst in somebody. Like Unity's trying to help the universe become more peaceful and all that, granted against their wills, but still like she's technically doing good work, but here's Rick to come in and be like, hey, fuck all that, let's party, and completely almost destroy a lot of that work that she was building up.
Yeah, bro. Literally kills a planet. I wrote that in my notes. I said he literally is killing a planet.
Exactly. Like the whole planet literally almost goes to total shit because Rick just wants to party. And it's basically kind of that matter of like Unity is someone who's, it's kind of in a real world sense, it's like basically say you're two friends, you're a friend and you have a friend, and like you are trying to grow up and get your shit together, get everything proper for your life, but your friend, he's still stuck in like the college frat boat bro, like lifestyle, still want to drink and party and all that. And and basically with Unity, it's like I got to cut that off, like, because while you can keep doing your thing, that's fine for you, but I got to think about myself, because being with you, I'm self-destructing. I'm ruining all the progress I have made, and I can't do that. And that's just sort of that thing I really enjoy about that aspect, because while it is like super like interplanetary with this whole like assimilating a whole entire race of alien species, it's still grounded by the real world consequence of letting your old college buddy or so come back into your life and just kind of take you down, bring you down from all the progress you managed to make in your life.
Yeah, or even just an ex, like it is in the show. Like, we have a connection, but we're not good for each other, and
exactly.
But to your point, Tariq, about the feeling of that tone switch, I do feel like the show has a tendency to flip that switch very suddenly in a lot of episodes. And sometimes I feel like it works, and sometimes it's a little more jarring. And like for instance, last season with Rick Potion number 9, the last thing is after they kill their alternate selves and start to take their place, it cues that really sad song. And that one works for me. Like, it's a really heavy thing that happens. And then that final moment really works. But like you said, this one maybe feels like they have a tendency to just play a really interesting song choice, and like usually a bit slower, and then like make everything real dramatic at the end. And I think sometimes, like I said, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. There's actually a big instance later in the season that I was feeling very much like, oh, I don't know if this works on the level that they want it to, even though it's a good song. But we'll talk about that later. That's later in the season. But I do understand your feeling.
I think that is how that's how I feel, is that I like where I like where it went. I love where it went. I don't know. I think just initially, and then talking to you guys about it, that's why I just I didn't even write down that's how I felt. I wrote down ask them. So like I did kind of I wanted to hear how you guys felt about that. And hearing you guys talk about it, I think it and in kind of looking back and looking at the scope of the season and what happens later, it kind of puts a lot in perspective for me. Like, okay, yeah, I think I'm rolling with this. I think I get it. But yeah, there's a couple times where the switch kind of is a little jarring. There's one in the first season where I didn't think the switch was jarring, but I felt like because of what the episode was, I felt like a lot of people wouldn't focus on the moment. It was Rick's Minutes, I think. With Beth and Jerry at the end,
Jerry
right?
and Beth and the alternate versions of them. That's right. That is another song switch moment. Yeah.
Right.
I can't remember what happened in that.
That's the where they have
interdimensional cable. And so
the first interdimensional cable.
Yeah, and so they in that one, Beth and Jerry have been looking through these goggles that they can see through with their eyes in alternate dimensions, and they're like starting to see that they have accomplished all their dreams in other universes. So there's this moment where Beth is watching through the goggles and Jerry's watching something on interdimensional TV, and then they merge, and it like has to do with their alternate selves feeling regret over not being together anymore. And so that's when they flip the switch with that song. And after such a silly improvised episode, I think you're right, Tariq. It is kind of like such a tone shift.
Right. And I love that moment. But again, I feel like when people think about that episode, like even me, when I think about that episode, I just think about how funny it is. Like I didn't, when we watched it, I was like, oh, wait, this happens. I forgot this happens. And this is really sweet. Right. But that's not what my takeaway is going to be. And that's the thing about stories like this is like, okay, great example, because we spent a month talking about it. You think of Leela's Homeworld, Jurassic Park, Luck of the Fire-ish, The Sting, hilarious episodes of Futurama. But when you think back to them, you think about the heart, you think about what they're trying to say. When you're trying to say something, that's what I should come away thinking about. You know what I mean?
You're right.
But when we first started talking about this one, we were automatically like, oh, this one's hilarious. You know what I mean?
Right. But to kind of go off of what you were saying there, like from Futurama, I think the thing with the difference though with Rick and Morty and Futurama's cases, like with Futurama, it's like a gradual build, but you go from say the interdimensional cable into that Jerry and Beth moment, it doesn't feel like a thread through line. It feels like, oh, we're gonna throw this this important potent moment right here into this super improvised thing where it's like a lot of these are just kind of a bunch of throwaway jokes, whereas with Futurama is like all the jokes fall in line to build up to that
story. That was very much the B plot, like the Jerry and Beth stuff and Summer stuff. That was very much the B plot, where the primary focus of Rick's Minutes was look at these funny alternate television shows. And so while I do think it's a great moment, it does very much feel like, oh, that's like not what this episode was about. You know what I mean? Like this episode is about the funny improvised stuff.
So yeah. I promise we'll get off this, but I just have one last question about this.
All right.
Do you guys think that the purpose of something like that in like a Rick Minutes, and maybe even here in this one, do you think the purpose of it is the juxtaposition? Do you think that's the purpose? The juxtaposition of all of these wild things happening, all of this hilarity, and then they drag it into a real place immediately. You think that's the thought process?
I don't know if it's the purpose. I do think it's the method. Like, I don't know. It feels like a conscious, like a conscious decision in how they're doing it. Because also, like, I don't necessarily know. And I do think that connection that they did with Beth and Jerry in Rick Minutes is very smart. Like it's a really smart way to connect the interdimensional cable idea to their like woes about and regrets about their lives. It's more so so it totally makes sense to me on paper. It's mostly like the tonal shift of the episode between those two stories that feels a little weird to me. So I don't know. I don't know if it's just a byproduct of Rick and Morty being Rick and Morty, where like it's a really weird, goofy show that is like bombastic and silly, but sometimes they want to have these strong emotional moments. And like, for that reason, sometimes it's tough to click and shift those things back into this other tone, you know?
I would say, yeah, I ultimately do feel like it's kind of an unintentional thing, because you see with Rick Minutes, it's like they do that. Then you see with the Interdimensional Cable 2 in this season, they don't really have a dramatic moment happen. It's just kind of funny, more funny shit that still happens throughout the whole thing.
We're gonna get to that one, but I know we said we move on,
but I'm almost talking myself out of what I just argued right now, because
okay, so let's hear it.
Because the other thing is that the other part of that episode is that Morty and Rick have already experienced something that is so well. I mean, Rick has obviously experienced plenty, but Morty has already experienced something that is so foundationally shaking to his understanding of the universe that he is just like, I don't care about my alternate selves. I'm going to watch TV with my grandpa. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so like there is kind of, it does almost feel like the juxtaposition is intentional there, because like it's two characters who aren't worried about those existential questions, and they're just like, I'm just going to watch funny TV. I'm just going to watch weird TV. Okay, and the whole big moment, other than the moment with Jerry and Beth, is Morty going to Summer and being like, hey dude, here's what I've experienced. The universe is chaotic and meaningless. You should come watch television with us, because like, this is all we've got, you know? Right, and so I almost just talked myself. I think I just talked myself out of it, even though I argue. Oh, man.
Keeps you thinking.
Right. It does. This show does keep you thinking. And that's why we're going to keep talking about it, because we have talked for like 50 minutes about
Let's get episodes. Out of here, man.
Right. There's so much to talk about. Okay, so 204 is Total Rickall, yes. Which is the episode where the Smith household is invaded by transforming parasites. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of the episode, this is where I want to connect it back to what I was talking about in Mortynight Run with alternate Ricks and Mortys.
Okay.
Because there's a moment in Mortynight Run after Morty has killed the gas creature. He walks back to the spaceship, and Rick is loading in the trunk with these green rocks, just these green space rocks, and he's loading them all in, and they have like little pink things on them, and he loads them into his trunk. The beginning of this episode, Rick walks in and empties those same rocks into the trash, which incites Jerry being like, don't put glowing space rocks in my trash. But I think the implication is that this episode is the Rick and Morty from that episode, because he's got those space rocks that we saw our Rick and Morty do. And we know from Mortynight Run that Rick and Morty C-137 went, oh no, we don't know that they went to Blips and Chits, but we do know that we know that our Rick and Morty got those space rocks from that adventure with the gas monster or the gas creature. And then there they are in this episode. So this episode also features Mr. Poopy Butthole, who is in all of the intro sequences, because that's like the whole point of this episode is, was he here all along or not?
Right, yeah. Which ruined me the first time I saw this.
Right. Hilarious. And at the end we learned that he was. So I guess the other question is Rick and Morty from Mortynight Run and this episode, is like Mr. Poopy Butthole just a part of their story? Is that why he's in their introduction?
Damn. Not damn.
You just did it. You solved the puzzle.
Exactly. It's like,
that's so good.
You are wondering, because are they just, because they just have this random, it's like, okay, here's this new episode with this new character you never heard of. And so now it's like, now that makes sense. It's like, we never heard of this guy because this is not the same Rick and Morty.
Right.
Holy shit.
And I know he comes back in later episodes, but like, this episode implies that Mr. Poopy Butthole has been friends with this and Rick and Morty through all of their adventures. That's the implication. Right. And so like our Rick could know Mr. Poopy Butthole still. Right. You know what I mean? So even if he appears, I guess we'll have to watch those later episodes to determine if there's anything that empirically connects it to C-137. But it feels to me like maybe that's supposed to be the implication, that like a subtle implication that this is a different Rick and Morty and they adventure with Mr. Poopy Butthole most of the time.
That is nuts. Because when this episode came out and they put bro in the intro, they had me tripping the hell out. I was like, yo, did I just like not notice? Like, what the hell are they doing?
Exactly.
So wild, man.
Yeah, you just think about it, it's like, is this just for a bit? Just like, why? But now, like with what you said, is like, oh, okay, no, they were being 10 steps ahead of us on this shit.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you clever bastards, I'll give you that.
Oh man, so interesting. That being said, regardless of those implications, this is a great episode. I love this episode so much.
Funny episode is really good.
Oh, very good.
It's so funny. And so I don't know, have you guys ever watched Community? I know, Tariq, you said you haven't watched Community, right? You're not a Community guy.
I haven't neither.
Community is a great show, Dan Harmon's show. And they, on a couple occasions, did a thing where they had an episode that was a clip show. You're all familiar with clip shows, but they did their clip show in a unique way that it was formatted like a clip show, but all of the clips they were flashing back to was new content. So they were parodying the concept of a clip show and also implying that the characters in Community go on all these other adventures that we don't actually see, and we're flashing back to those. It's like a really smart way to parody a clip show. And to me,
they do that
feels
on
like Rick and Morty's.
They did. Yeah, they did do that on Ed, Edd and Eddy.
Nice. I guess I got to watch Ed, Edd and Eddy.
I'll show you.
But I feel this to me feels like Rick and Morty's version of the clip show, where they're like, hey, here are all our memories. But they use this sci-fi premise of these parasites are implanting memories into us and using that to their advantage to like exist in our household, in our situation. Which is cool. It's just a cool instance of like Rick and Morty using something sci-fi to play with television tropes in an interesting new way.
Yeah, no, this is This is one of my favorite concepts of the whole show, to be honest.
Mhm.
I really
Yeah.
like the concept of this. Again, something I brought up last time. Rick and Morty has to be an impossible show to either coordinate or animate or design for, because look at all the damn character designs.
Right.
Like, yeah, whatever, the background artist got a break because it just takes place in the house the whole time. But there's just so many characters. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. And
all uniquely designed.
All
That's,
uniquely
like all
designed.
of them stand out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To the point they don't even do the I can't think of a good movie to use this example for off the back of my hand. But it is something that happens relatively normally and understandably so. In a CGI animated film, for example, right? They will take a model and either change the colors or adjust them a little bit to create incidentals. That is not what they do here. It is a different design with a different silhouette every single time, and I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
It is wild how many, like because like you said last time we talked about the show, it's like every episode goes to new locations with new alien designs, and and you know what? Ultimately, maybe this is why we can't blame the show so much for those long production cycles.
Absolutely,
I mean,
yeah.
even though allegedly the long cycle between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4 was because of the writing stage, like. This stuff has to take so long. This stuff has to take so long. So, you know, it's hard for me to criticize those production cycles when the show is doing so much.
Right.
Even though it feels wild that they've done 4 seasons in almost 8 years, which is a lot. It's a long time. Granted, we're about to get the 5th, so it seems like they're now on a more standard cycle because this is coming out about a year after the last season. So we're at least moving more on a more standard cycle now. But yeah, it's impressive. Every single. I mean, how many characters are in this episode? There's like 25 new characters in this episode.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many. I love Sleepy Gary and Jerry.
Sleepy Gary and Jerry, man. Sleepy Gary. That is my highlight of the episode. Is Jerry falling in love with Sleepy Gary in his mind?
Yeah.
And
when they're kissing on a yacht, and he's, "What are we doing?"
Right. This is a moment where I felt genuinely bad for Jerry. He was truly like
kind of fucked up.
I don't know about that because like. Because just now, as I thought about it, it's like it was only Jerry that ended up playing himself and somehow forgetting that he was actually real. Like everybody else was like, "Yeah, I'm real." Like everybody else in the family is real, but Jerry was the only.
The way that the parasite slid in there, the parasite somehow intercepted the marriage. So the parasite is married to Beth.
Married to Beth, right?
Like. And then, okay, so I will say, even in feeling bad for Jerry, he's still an asshole. Because when when they shoot Sleepy Jerry, and he's Sleepy like, Gary. "No!" I'm sorry, Sleepy Gary. When they shoot Sleepy Gary, and he's like, "No, Gary!" And he puts the gun to his head. He's like, "Just put me, I want to be with Gary." And then it's like, "No, Jerry, get up. You're my husband." And then he gets up, and then he instantly tries to kiss Beth. Like as soon as he gets up.
And it's funny because that's followed by literally such an awful memory where like Beth is straight up like she's running away from this crazy guy coming after her, and like Jerry's just in the car and locks her out, and
the sound design.
Dude, get out there and fucking help her.
It's true. For the moment that I felt bad for Jerry, it is immediately undone by that memory where you're just like, all right, I feel bad for Jerry in this moment, but then you realize, oh, Jerry is the worst.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The sound design in that thing with the car is they don't even. There's no music. all you hear is like the rattling of the shopping cart.
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh my god,
so
it's eerie. Yeah.
And that's another clip show flashback. It's clip show flashback, but to a real moment.
Right.
Have you guys ever had a dream where you meet someone and like fall in love and then wake up and it's not real? You never had that happen?
Don't even remind me. Do not remind me. I'm still looking for her. I can't find her. I don't know where she is. If you listen to cartoons that curse, ma'am, this is my cell phone. Please call.
That's to me why like I still felt bad for Jerry in that moment. I'm like, man, I've felt that before, you know, when you those dreams will betray you sometimes. And yeah.
My whole thing though is like I wanted to feel bad, but like I said, it's like he's so weak-minded. He let a parasite interrupt his own marriage.
That's so funny though. It's funny that he's the only one that happened to. Like Rick,
exactly.
Like
everyone else
didn't get any new siblings or nothing like that. He is the only one that got
like he got erased from his own life somehow.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's like, damn, you were that pathetic. Like you don't you clearly don't love your wife that much that you could somehow forget you're married to her. And that you cheat on her with her imaginary fucking husband too.
Yeah, I think that's the really bad part is that they like sleeping around on Beth.
Yeah, he's like, so pathetic. Although to be fair, like Beth doesn't come out of this episode looking good either. Shooting Mr. Poopy Butthole.
Oh no.
Yeah. Man, when she did that and I saw actual blood, I was like,
exactly. Like when that happened, when I first saw that when it first premiered, I was literally shocked because it was actual blood. Like usually it's usually some type of gooey green blood type shit, but no, they were like, look, you are going to be fucking traumatized by this one. You are going to feel bad for this character you just got introduced to and thought was clearly fake.
No, I was like, there's two things about that I really like. I really like, number one, I like Jerry when he calls the cops. My wife shot a longtime family friend. I think that's hilarious.
Right.
And Beth, the character animation on Beth when she just runs to the kitchen and gets the wine and just like shaking while she's pouring the wine.
Yes. It's so dark.
Yeah.
It's so fucked up. It's like, oh my god, she's drinking. Why? Here now? You can't do this.
Even like they kind of do, you know, like when Summer realizes Beth is real, her memory of her is like her just being drunk in her bed when she's supposed to drive Summer somewhere, which is also another dark. Right. Yeah. Like I guess we kind of know that it's seemingly Rick is an alcoholic, and so it's like it kind of feels like we've got that it's like a father-daughter situation where they're both kind of alcoholics.
Right. Mm-hmm. The thing is, though, about that, going back to what you said with the fact that we're technically following like the a different Rick and Morty. Technically, that indicates that's not the Beth. Like this is that Beth that's constantly a drunk to that point. Because I don't think we have anything from like the previous season to really indicate how much of a drunkard she is.
She drinks wine in 60 minutes, but that's just one time she drinks wine.
Right.
So yeah, I guess so.
It's also, you know, and it's also possible that there are different traits that cross over different universes, you know. And it's also possible that even with these background hints that maybe this aren't our Rick and Morty, like ultimately the writers will do what they want to do that serves the story. So like whether that's a reveal later or that's retconned later, like it could go either way. You know, they could, like, it's a show with infinite possibilities. They basically have free range to do whatever they want for that reason. Yeah. But that is an interesting point. Like, do they ever talk about these events in other episodes? I don't remember. I don't remember.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I have no idea.
All right, let's move on. We talked about that one for a long time too. There's so much to talk about with these.
Yeah. There really is.
We didn't even touch on Keith David as the
oh my god, we didn't. And the funny thing is, Keith David's in that episode as giraffe, and he's in the next episode as the president.
There we go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Keith David is great. So let's talk about him in 205, Get Schwifty, the episode where a giant head shows up on Earth as a part of an intergalactic music competition that kidnaps entire planets and forces them to sing for their amusement. This is a silly episode, and it's
really stupid.
Yeah.
It is really stupid.
But great, like we said, great Keith David guest performance as the president, who does return as the president later as well. Keith David's always going to give a great performance. And also, I think when they were making this season, they were also making Community season 6, which he was a full-time cast member of Community season 6 because they lost a lot of cast members for the last 2 seasons. And so he was one of the people they brought in, and he's so good. He's so good in season 6, which is otherwise just a decent season. He's great in it. So I feel like that's the connection, is like he was working with Dan Harmon on Community, and they're like, hey, let's bring you over to Rick and Morty and get that great voice in multiple episodes this season. How do you guys feel about these less scientific and more ridiculous like concepts like this one?
This one, I gotta be honest. Like, I know Get Schwifty was like a very meme heavy thing for a lot of people. Like, they loved quoting it and like all that, but it was one of those things where I felt it's not a bad episode to me, but it definitely was like, it's not the strongest. You know what I mean? Like, I'm laughing. Like, it does get some good laughs out of me. Keith David is awesome and funny as hell in it, but like, it is one of those things where I feel like, okay, this was. I don't know. I feel like it probably could have been a bit stronger, because its the whole thing is just, hey, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna make fun of those reality singing competitions, and I'm like,
yep,
okay, that's cool. I mean, that's your bar. I mean, that's sort of something expected from you, but at the same time, it's like, but because the way they go about it is like, we're gonna create our own song, and it's a song that's pure comedy. You're never going to want to actually listen to it, like, genuinely.
I think you're right. This feels like an episode where the premise outshines the execution in a lot of ways. But it does have a lot of funny stuff in it still. Like, even though it feels like, when I think about this episode, I'm like, what a good premise. I don't think about that many specific moments other than the memed song, you know?
This does have one of my favorite bits in the whole show, with Keith David president, where he's like, so they need a hit song, we should call it The Dream, and then nobody knows who the hell The Dream is. It's like, The Dream, he wrote Single Lady. This is how I found out that The Dream wrote Single Ladies. Like, I remember watching this episode and I was like, huh?
Rick and Morty taught me that.
Rick and Morty taught me that The Dream wrote Single Ladies. I love The Dream. I didn't know The Dream wrote Single Ladies, and I like when shows, because BoJack does stuff like this too, where they just throw obscure, like, facts in speech.
Yep.
Like, because they did that last season with the whole Bill Murray conversation about Gazorp Field and everything like that. Garfield.
Gazorp Field. Yeah,
That's funny. Like, because it's like, what are you doing? like how did you notice this? How do you know this? And like, this is just really funny. And that stuff with The Dream gets me every time, and I've never forgotten it. And that might be the only thing that I take away from this episode, aside from the fact that Dan Harmon's Ice-T impression is either really spot on, or he's trying really, really hard and he misses it a little bit. It's either or. It depends on the line read.
I feel, for me, because I remember we were watching it and I mentioned, it's like, I could have sworn they had got Ice-T for that. That sounds a lot like him. And you're like, no, they didn't get him for this. I was like, damn. That was a good impression.
I've watched too much SVU to know that that's not really.
I really like the Ice-T subplot. It's so silly, and it's so, like, other than him saving the day, it's like, it's really inconsequential until it's not. They're just like, okay, Rick and Morty, and we need some people to do the singing competition, so we're gonna get Rick and Morty and Ice-T. That's it. Like, that's all we got. And but the Ice-T lore is so funny, that he's from another planet, and and the way they bring him back to save the day is really funny. And then the tag is like all of the different letters from.
He's water tea. Yeah, he's really water tea.
You guys got any other thoughts about Get Schwifty before we move on to The Ricks Must Be Crazy?
No, I think Mann summed this one up pretty good. It's a really good comment. I do think, I don't know, they might be trying to say something with the subplot.
The religious aspect to everything.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I felt like that was kind of, I don't know, I felt like it was kind of weak because I don't know, I didn't hate it, but it definitely was like, I felt like this is kind of falling into the trope of annoying characters being annoying. Like, because it's like, oh, you guys are falling for the idea of this is a new god and we need to worship him. And I'm like, okay, y'all are idiots. I'm tired of watching y'all. Go back to Schwifty.
I do feel you. I think though that they are trying to make a statement about mob mentality, I guess, and how we follow certain things out of fear. Believe certain things out of fear.
I think the other thing that they're maybe trying to say with that subplot is, because I feel like it's very much focused on Principal Vagina's, like, it's hard to say his name without laughing.
No, this is rough.
This man's name is Vagina. Like, think about that. His parents said that should be his name. Like,
no,
how you can't
name,
go
right?
through school.
So that was already
his
their
last name.
I think it's his last name.
He gotta live like
to me
us.
though, I think it's maybe saying something about power vacuums, and like this new scenario arises with this head stealing the earth, and all of a sudden, like, they are potentially doomed and they're in this situation, and you've got this random character who maybe is searching for power in his role as principal, but doesn't necessarily get it. He's like, constantly, we see previously, he's like very insecure about his name, and he's like, I'm very much in charge, he's like got a lot of insecurities there.
Right.
And in this episode, he's actually like immediately inserting himself into this power vacuum. Like, I'm going to take advantage of this new situation and become this leader of this like new religion, because he's the one who's pretending he can hear what the heads are saying. And he's using the situation to like be in a position of authority. Which is interesting. I don't necessarily know what it's trying to say about that, but it is an interesting scenario where, like, he's not necessarily the one you'd expect to do that, but he immediately took advantage of this new situation and people followed along, and he was desperate not to give up his power. Like throughout the episode, they're like, no, this is what's happening. And he's like, send them up to the heads. We got to get rid of them. Yeah.
I think the episode might just be trying to say, oh, this happens, instead of trying to make an overt statement about what it actually is. I guess.
Yeah, to a degree, I think they're saying it is bad because, vagina, something happens to vagina, and like,
it's rough.
That's just right. And like, that's just sort of that thing of like, don't follow people who just say, oh, I know what the God is saying. Cause it's like, do you really though? You're just some dude. Why you? Why?
Yeah.
How are you the dude that they're speaking to? Especially since it's Vagina. It's a guy with the name Vagina. Think about it. His first name, if it was Rick, you'd have Dick Vagina. Think about that.
Yeah.
That's like, pretty good. Hey, that's a good character name. That should be his name.
His first name is Gene. I was trying. It would have been funny if it was Richard.
Gene.
That's a miss.
I like Gene more.
But yeah, like that's just sort of that thing. Is that I get their whole message against being a blind follower to people like pastors and such who just want to say, I know what our God is really saying, and all this is like, and it's like, no, you don't. You're just some dude. If the God really existed and wanted to talk, he talked to everybody, not just.
I mean, not to piss off the Catholics, but that's what the Pope. That's supposedly what the Pope is. So maybe there is some commentary going on there. So, and with that note, let's move on.
Before somehow we invoke the wrath of the evangelicals
of the Pope. 206. The Ricks Must Be Crazy. cartoons that curse pissing off the Pope in our 6th episode. All right, 206, the Ricks must be crazy. This is the one where Rick and Morty visit the microverse that powers Rick's car engine.
Oh yeah.
This is a great concept, another really good sci-fi concept. I do want to point this out. This is less overt, but an entire universe in a tiny box. Futurama did it. Just saying. Very different, but Futurama did it.
Well, I mean, technically Simpsons did it, which also was parodying
with Genesis
another
Dub.
movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. I guess the specifically though, Futurama is like, there is a universe in this box, and if you go in it, you're in a new universe. And this one is very much like universe in the box. Right. But yes, there is like a lot of things where it's like tiny. Like, in fact, Futurama isn't the tiny people in the box or the tiny people situation. It's not a microverse. Yeah. It's just a parallel universe.
Right.
But you're right. The Simpsons does the Genesis tub in a very good Treehouse of Horror episode where Lisa gets sucked down to her tooth that turns into a whole society. Really good guest actors in this episode too. Stephen Colbert is like the primary guest performance as the main, not really alien, but whatever those creatures are in the microverse.
Basically the Rick of like the multi-dimension or that microverse. Right. Yeah.
And then when they get even further down, it's Nathan Fielder, who I don't know if you guys ever seen Nathan For You, but Nathan For You is a very funny show. Oh, you guys should check out Nathan For You. It's really weird. It's a show where he pitches really weird out of the box business ideas to actual businesses and convinces them they're good ideas. And then so it's like almost a reality show. And like the ideas are so ridiculous that they're like, wow, how do these people go along with them? But usually he does a good job convincing them that it's going to be a good idea. We're going to try it. Just to give you a little idea, the very first episode is him helping a frozen yogurt place. And his idea is they're going to drum up business with a controversial flavor of poo. So they create a poo flavored frozen yogurt, and that is their big business thing.
Prefacing that with the word controversial is really funny.
I'm curious now. I'm like,
you don't want to taste it.
Anybody?
That's what you would say.
You went there for a moment, and some people are going to try it. Like, because you're like, I'm curious, and some people are like, well, gonna try it.
I'm more curious. I was more like, I'm curious. How the fuck does he convince anybody to go along with that? You got who?
You know what? We're gonna jump on a stream voice call one of these days, and we're gonna watch some Nathan For You. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
All right,
it's a ridiculous show. Shout out to Nathan For You. Good show. Actually, the producer of this show, Mikey, interned on one of the seasons of Nathan For You. And, got some fun behind the scenes stories there.
The one day he's not here.
Yeah, the one day he's not here.
Let's talk about slavery with extra steps.
Oh my god, bruh, that was so funny to me. Like fucking slavery with extra steps, and it's like. It really is.
I like that it becomes like a motif. Rick just kind of repeats the entire thing.
Right. Exactly. Morty is like, Rick, this is slavery with extra steps. This is a problem. And Rick's like, no, it's not. And then they get down. And once he realizes that his creation is about to sabotage the power that powers his car, he's like, he says all the same stuff that Morty says.
Right.
This is same and it's like, and it's proof that all these people, other than I guess Morty, are just doing this. They're just selfish. Like they don't care about the slavery with extra steps thing. They're just in it for the free car battery.
Exactly.
It's just sort of that thing. Cause this is the episode that really plays into the idea of like Rick's God complex. Like he literally makes a whole universe just for a battery, like just for a car battery. And he goes down there and he's not like a benevolent being. He clearly wants to be worshipped and all that, and he does it in all the stupidest ways. He's like, yeah, I told him that flipping each other off means peace and love.
Yeah.
Peace among worlds.
Yeah, peace on all worlds and shit. And it's like it's just funny to me, like, that he could literally take the idea of being a god and make it so stupid somehow.
No doubt.
But I mean, that speaks a bit more to the idea of, like, people, or to the idea of the god complex, is like, yeah, he can literally just make whatever the fuck he wants to up, and
Right.
people follow along thinking,
And it's
yeah,
more,
that's right.
And it's more proof that, like, Rick has just reached a level of apathy that is like beyond, you know, because, like, he knows what he's done. Like, he knows he's created a whole universe of people who are simply existing to power his car. And it doesn't matter. Like, it's just a blip on the radar for him. It's not anything important. It's not this big important existential question. It's like he has reached the point where he's just like, this is what all of the universe is like. All of the multiverse is like. Me doing this is no better or worse than fate, you know, to everyone else. Like, this, like, there's just random chaos, and this is the cards they're dealt. And we're dealt weird cards too. He just doesn't give a shit. It's interesting. What do you guys, any other thoughts about the Ricks Must Be Crazy?
So this one has all of that stuff with Summer in the car.
Oh my god.
Right.
That
Which
was so hilarious.
Okay. Because so there's one thing that I wrote down is that the shit with, like, they bring back, like, Buddy's, like, dead son, like, that stuff is really rough.
Dude,
and then, like,
so
it's
intense.
like watch him disintegrate. It's pretty rough. But
like, let's stop for a second and think about this. Summer tells this car not to be violent, so it's like, okay, I gotta be creative. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hack this man's brain, find pieces of his memories and who he truly loves and what he has lost, and recreate that damn thing just to tell it not to attack the car, and then have it disintegrate in front of him.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck?
It's rough.
Like Jesus.
Yeah. But I will say, because this episode does something that we were actually talking about earlier, and I didn't realize it until we started talking about it, is that this one, the tone of this one disintegrates gradually because it is extremely somber by the end. I mean, yeah, it ends on a joke, but, like, the adventure, like, for example, the final frontier with, like, Rick and one of the guys in, like, little mini-verse, when they're like fighting, it's like, it's quiet. There's, like, no music. It's, like, raining. Yeah. Like, it's really dull, and Morty's just really bored. And then even by the time they get out of there and they go see Summer, like, the calm of that storm is already, like, everything's kind of calm over there, and then they go see Summer and everything. Like, the episode somehow slows down without you noticing that it's slowing down. Yeah. Which I do think is a good pace for this show, but it's something that I noticed about this one.
Yeah, that is sort of the thing, because it starts so high level, but it does, like, somehow build down. Usually a lot of, like, shows or movies or in general, or stories in general, like, build up. But this one, it's like, we're starting high, but we just dip down and down more and more with the tone, because it's like, yeah, we just end with this whole somber note of, yeah, they could either stop working and I just throw them out and their whole universe is destroyed, or they can continue to keep being the worker bees and living. It's like, well, fuck. It's like, that's a horrible situation.
But
that's
it also
capitalism for you.
It also feels like there is, I mean, this is just like thinking outside of the box, so to speak. But there's with Stephen Colbert's character having this knowledge, one of my first thoughts was, well, he knew that they had to keep doing that in this moment to continue to provide power to the car, but he's also a genius who has figured out all of these other, he's a scientific genius. So he could theoretically now just devise a new way for them to provide power to Rick's car without making it everyone doing these, like, steppy things. You know what I mean? Right. So, like, there's still weird. There's, like, weirdly a point of still like a place of like power and privilege coming from him having the knowledge of what their universe is that he can still use to his advantage, especially because him knowing that, like, he's probably going to be the top of the totem pole in his universe, you know what I mean, in his microverse.
Right.
But it's interesting, like, obviously they wanted to create conflict, but like theoretically Rick could have created some way for them to provide him power that didn't involve them literally manually stepping on buttons. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
If anything, he could have made it so it's like, okay, you made this little mini universe. Well, that now starts powering my shit too, like,
right.
or something like that. It's like,
Right.
just replace the power. But like I said, that's kind of what speaks against capitalism and kind of to the bigger narrative of the fact that it's like, there are better ways we could be doing shit that's more efficient, and yet we're not doing it.
Right.
Like, it's sort of that socio-political economic like note they were trying to be kind of hit with a bit, that's or subconsciously hitting you with when you think about it.
All right, well, let's move on to 207, Big Trouble in Little Sanchez. It's the one where Rick puts his consciousness in a younger clone and then goes to high school. For me, this was always an episode I thought back on and was like, it felt like a meme episode. The Tiny Rick thing, I was like, oh, this is like the meme one. This was like pre Pickle Rick. Like, this was what led to Pickle Rick, and those are the memes that no one shuts up about. You know, it's like Tiny Rick, Pickle Rick, and so I think because of that perception in my memory, I forgot how good this episode is. I think this is a really good episode. Because the Tiny Rick thing is funny, but I think the B plot of Jerry and Beth is one of the best B plots in the show, where they go to couples counseling. What do you guys think about Big Trouble in Little Sanchez?
I think that this episode has two really, really interesting concepts put into a really, really interesting episode. But for some reason, I couldn't. That's what I wrote down. I said, I just can't tell if I have Rick and Morty fatigue, because I felt like I should have enjoyed this one more than I did, because all of the puzzle pieces are there. And it's not even that I don't think that it's funny, because it was doing a lot of funny stuff. I just don't know if it made me audibly laugh as like a lot of the other ones of the season. Like, all of that stuff with, like you said, that the B plot, all that stuff with Jerry and Beth, and just the kind of personifications of how they see each other, I think is genius. Like, I think it's a really, really great way to articulate all of that. It kind of says a lot too, because it says, so the way Jerry sees Beth is kind of sweet. Like, it kind of is, because he sees her so high up that he somehow created a version that's stronger than the one that he actually lives with. And granted, she's a fucking monster, so it's not all the way sweet.
Xeno Queen, like, she's such a big monster. Yeah,
but but that's the thing, is that there is kind of a redeeming thing with that, even if it is kind of fucked up. But there's still kind of like a redeeming thread with Beth and how she sees Jerry. He's just a fucking worm. He's a worm, like in real life. The first time you see the worm, like, that's exactly what she does. Like, he's just kind of whimpering and everything like that. Like, I don't know.
It was really funny when, like, Gary had to actually address that worm himself, and like, it's bending over.
Shooting his ass up.
Jerry literally just puts one fist up, and then this like envisioned version of him is like, oh no, like, so like the moment it happens, he's like cowering, which is obviously how Beth sees Jerry. But it's like, you know, Jerry does the bare minimum, just like is just like you know,
exactly.
It's really interesting. But I love the moment that I thought was really cool was when when the Xeno Queen monster Beth is creating more little Jerrys, more subservient Jerrys out of Beth's brain, and then Jerry shows up again and starts killing them, and he's like trying to save the day. And in that moment, all of a sudden, Beth sees Jerry differently. Just in that moment, all of a sudden, all the new Jerrys coming out are these jacked like hero Jerrys. That's such a smart. That's so smart because like really like it's true. Like our perceptions of people can change really on a dime. You know what I mean? Like, and like in that moment, like she's obviously got a lot of deeply rooted frustrations with Jerry, but in that moment she was like, Jerry is a hero. Like he's here. He's my big, strong hero who's here to save me. And all of a sudden that's the Jerry that's coming out of the machine. Yeah, it's cool. It's a really cool concept. I love that idea of like, let's explore how you see each other in a sci-fi way, you know.
Right.
It's cool.
Right. I really enjoyed that, how deep they were able to take it that far and showing it's like, oh yeah, everyone else, people do see each other in such a toxic manner and such, but the way they did it with this is like, because we saw all those other alien couples and like they're more combative against each other and hate each other, but like literally, like the biggest one that spoke volumes to me was when they were showing off Beth and Jerry's personifications and say like when they got out they were like, oh no, they're codependent. It's like, oh shit. It's like, oh shit, that is what's wrong with them, isn't it? Like they can't live without the other, and it's fucked up like that. It's like that, and it shouldn't be. Like it just kind of speaks to how much they should not be together at all.
Rick and Morty does something that The Simpsons does, but The Simpsons only does it to one character. But interestingly enough, Rick and Morty does it to two. Marge is my favorite character in The Simpsons. He's my favorite member of the family. But one thing about Marge, though, is that like Bart has Milhouse, Bart has Nelson, Bart has Jimbo and the guys or whatever. Homer has Carl and Lenny. Lisa even has Jenny or whoever she talks to at the school. You know what I mean? But Marge has no one. Marge has no friends, and everything Marge does revolves around a family or a character they invented for said episode.
That's true.
And that's what they and with The Simpsons, though, I don't think they did that on purpose with Marge. I think what happened with Marge is just kind of like just what happens when you don't have women writers. You know what I mean? Like, and you don't have people to go, hey, maybe we should give her more stuff to do. You know what I mean? Because of that, they do damage control in like the middle seasons, and they start pairing her up with what's Lovejoy's wife?
Helen
Lovejoy.
Helen, that's the name I'm looking for. Helen. Like she has like a rivalry with Helen. Sometimes she's with Agnes. Like they do stuff like that sometimes. But in Rick and Morty, Beth nor Jerry have friends. They just kind of have each other. If their stories aren't revolved around each other or their kids, they're around Rick, but they never exceed outside of the family. But it is something that they don't do in general, right? Like Morty doesn't have any friends. And Summer's only friend was like a narc. You know what I mean? Everything kind of revolves around Rick. Everybody's kind of codependent of each other. Like, you know what I mean? And I think I do think it's kind of smart on their because they're playing with that concept, right? That's why I think it's kind of smart on their end where they kind of jam all of these characters together. And since they're always together, they're forced to figure it out, and they depend on each other for a lot of stuff that you probably shouldn't depend on another person for. Or you, as you grow up, you realize you have different friends, different people to talk to about different stuff or whatever. But like these characters don't have that. I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think they do a little bit more with that concept than something like The Simpsons does.
It should be interesting to revisit seasons 3 and 4 because I know we talked about previously like maybe our qualms with how Rick is handled after this, but I'm really curious to look at the rest of the family's development through seasons 3 and 4, especially because seasons 1 and 2 100% male writers' rooms. And they brought in a lot of women writers for seasons 3 and 4. And there's a lot of turnover in the writers' room overall, but it should be interesting. I'm really curious to see if like Beth's characterization changes at all, or Summer's characterization changes at all, or if there's like any more nuance to it than previously in these first 2 seasons. But that is an interesting point. There's like the only person at school we ever see Morty think or talk about is Jessica, and like that's the only person he talks to. Summer has some friends and whatnot, but like it's not a big part of the plot. Jerry doesn't have friends. Beth doesn't have friends. Yeah, they're all very isolated, other than their own family.
Yeah, and it is kind of heavily, not heavily, but it is kind of focused on every once in a while. Like for example, I think in an episode coming up. Actually, I think it's in the Purge one. Jerry's just kind of like, well, you're on your phone. Like, why are you you're always on your phone? You don't want to talk to us. And it's obvious Summer is always on her phone because she is the only one with other people to speak to. And the rest of them are just like, you never see the rest of them pull their phones out. If Jerry has his phone out, he's playing that stupid balloon game that I used to have that I may or may not have tried to download a couple
after
hours
watching
ago.
This episode. That's so funny.
I used to have it, man, but they don't. It's not there anymore. I'm upset. I want it again.
I'm trying to think if there's anything we should talk about Tiny Rick about before we move on. Like I feel like Tiny Rick is a really funny idea. I love his songs and like how he's crying for help through his art. That's really funny. But it doesn't feel like there's all that much to dissect from that plot line. It's more just like, this is a funny concept and like issue for them to solve. What do you have stuff to say about it, man?
I kind of like it because it's closer to around the end, is that basically you find out with Rick, when he transferred his body, is like his old man mind got sucked into the teenage angst mind and pushed to the subconscious basically. And like, I kind of like that, speaking to the idea of, it's like he got older and wanted to be younger, but he started realizing it's like, this isn't me. I'm not this young kid who's just trying to be cool for everybody. I don't like anybody. Like that's what it kind of speaks volumes a bit to who Rick is. Like, he doesn't like people. That's why he had to try to get saved, because he's like, dude, this is not me. I don't like any of these these pretentious children. Like, I'm not trying. I don't need to impress them. Who the fuck cares about them?
And our Rick doesn't even like all of the alternate versions of himself. He's the only one who refuses to like be a part of the council, like the Citadel of Ricks. Like that's how much Rick hates people. He doesn't even like the other parallel versions of himself.
Exactly.
That's interesting. That's like an interesting question, is the fact that our Rick, C-137 Rick or whatever, the fact that he hates himself, does that mean he hates himself? Like, do other Ricks not feel that same self-loathing that our Rick feels? Is there a reason for that? Will that be explored? Is it a metaphor, or is it just part of the plot? You know?
I get you.
Yeah. All right. Well, we should move on because we still got a few episodes to talk about. Let's talk about 208, Interdimensional Cable 2, Tempting Fate. Self-explanatory title. This is the second Interdimensional Cable episode, and I think the subtitle was the correct subtitle. How do you guys feel about this one?
I think this episode was them wanting to do an episode about Jerry sacrificing his cock. But they couldn't come up with a B story, so they dressed it in interdimensional cable clothes. There is barely any interdimensional cable in there. Right. There's significantly less in this.
There's definitely less, but I also think it's less memorable interdimensional cable, which kind of like
that too. Yeah.
It has this, because when I watched it, I noticed this, is that they clearly, because like Rick said it in the beginning, he's like, we're doing it again, but I mean, we practically nailed it the first time. It feels like basically they're on maybe we could try to beat this. try to beat our the first time, but you kind of get a feeling of either they're not trying that hard or they're trying too hard. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's sort of weird because it's like some of them like sometimes just go off and just be like, oh yeah, this is shit. Yo, man, you're shit. You're shit, man. It's like, oh, eat that piss, you piece of shit. I'm just kidding. It's like because at the little bits like thing, it's like,
yeah.
dude, what are you doing? Are y'all trying
Yeah.
anymore? Are you trying?
Yeah.
Or are you just saying whatever at this point?
I get you. This one is, it's just, it feels like, because I feel like they were trying to go for the balance that they managed in 60 Minutes, right? The balance
Right.
of doing all of the cable stuff while also kind of weaving in a story about the family and everything like that. Still kind of trying to tell a story in the midst of everything going on. And while I think 60 Minutes does a good balance of that, I feel like this one has a little bit more moving pieces than 60 Minutes. So that's why I feel like the stuff that happens to Jerry and to Beth kind of overpowers it to the point where, I don't know. Yeah. And even like what Johnny was saying, like like the stuff that they do that's crazy. The stuff that they end up doing ends up not as memorable. They're like, I wrote down this January it's time to Michael your Vincents. Like, I think that's
I think the Jan Michael Vincent is the one interdimensional cable show in this one that I thought was really funny. And honestly, the rest were a little forgettable for me. Like, that was the one that I was like, this is very funny.
I still think about that Plumbus one, and it's like, did I just watch a porno? What the hell was that? Like, what the hell is a Plumbus? Why did it feel so sexual?
Yeah,
it's skin like colored. What the hell? Like, this looks gross. Like, I feel like I'm watching porn, yet it's not. Like,
yeah, that was gross. That one's pretty gross. It's just I mostly like the Jerry story. I think it's a funny Jerry story that really illustrates his own insecurities about himself. Like, this whole idea of him, like, this whole idea that he's willing to give up his penis to save this like allegedly important alien creature. Jerry is the perfect person for that to happen to. That's a really funny concept. Like, Jerry, like, would Jerry do that? Would Jerry be willing to give up his penis for the greater good? And the answer is only if he starts to think that, like, it will make him some sort of hero in the eyes of, like, the public, like, it's he initially was like, no, but he's so easily manipulated into it because he has such low self-esteem. He's so easily manipulated into doing that.
And he tries to back out of it. Like, that's why he drags Beth into it.
Right. And then he puts the onus on Beth to, like, get me out of this, Beth, which is so Jerry. It's so fucking Jerry.
And I will say, I don't know what kind of dicks were in that catalog, but Beth was like, oh, like, Beth was like,
she was like so into it. She's like, hold on, wait. But I couldn't help but have this thinking or this mindset of, like, Beth, you're looking at that catalog and being impressed, but at the end of the day, that's got to go on Jerry. So
Jerry's not going to know how to use that.
It's the motion of the ocean. And you know what I mean? What are we doing?
we are literally insulting the sex life of a man named Jerry.
It's all right. He'll be okay.
I mean, we saw in season 1 that the best sex he ever had of his life was when his wife was a simulation that wasn't moving. So there's a lot to say about Jerry.
And then he starts to cry. I don't want to go back to that episode.
I love that subplot so
much. They do something in here that they do on The Simpsons, but they do it worse. Because they do this in The Simpsons where, like, I don't remember what episode it is. I think...
Are you talking about when Jerry gets shot up?
Yes, I think it's the one with Mr. Burns' son. Which one is it?
Yes, it was. It was.
Okay.
It was with Mr. Burns' son because, like, the news had tried to be like, "Oh, Homer Simpson is trying to charge the police," and he runs out and then gets completely shot down.
Shot on TV, and his entire family watches it, and they just scream, and it's insane. But at the end of the day, it's The Simpsons. You know what I mean? Like, he gets shot, but they shoot the hell out of Jerry.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
they murder him, and it's mean. Like, he pulls his pants down when they shoot him.
Right. It's the most embarrassing death. It's like, bro, you literally got caught with your pants down. Like, you're dead. You're filled to the brim with bullet holes in your head, neck, body all over,
so rough.
And your dick is out in a pool of your own blood.
It's so bad.
Like, there's no dignity in that death at all.
I can't even imagine seeing something like that. And Rick and Morty is one of those cartoons. The way they draw corpses is rough. Like, that is a corpse.
They're corpses. Yeah. Speaking of corpsey corpses, there's a lot in the next episode.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. We gotta keep it moving.
209, look who's purging now. It's the Purge parody. It's very self-explanatory once again. This is the Purge episode. Rick and Morty go to a planet that has a purge and decide to intervene and pay for it. So let's talk about this one. I know, Tariq, you said you really like this one. Why do you love Look Who's Purging Now?
So this one was a favorite of mine in college. If people ask me what was my favorite Rick and Morty, I would say this one. When I first started watching it, I was enjoying it, but I was kind of like, I don't remember. There's something about this one that I know made me say it was my favorite, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. What it actually is when they go to like bro's house, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you could use my building if you listen to my tale." And he pulls out his screenplay, and he blows the dust off it, and he reads it. And as soon as he starts reading it, Morty like squints. He's like really uncomfortable. Like, he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Like, and and then he gets so mad when Morty gives him one note that he asked for. He said, "Hey, give me notes, like, please." And Morty's like, "Oh, well, I think you should start it where it begins, not 3 weeks later." And he's like, "No, just get out. Like, you just kind of just shat all over my tail. You shat all over it." And then he pushes him down the stairs, and he says, "You want me to cut back to 3 weeks earlier when you were alive?"
That's such a good line. That is, without a doubt, funny, that is, to me, the highlight of the episode is Morty having to listen to the screenplay and then killing the guy. That is, I think, by far the funniest thing in this episode. And not just because I've made people read screenplays I've written, but because
that's what it is. Because I saw this. I went to college for film, so this was just such a film student thing. Like, that's what it was. Like, that entire part was really funny. Yep. And even then, I think the episode kicks itself into high gear after that. Like, I think. When they start playing the 2022 record. When they start playing the record and they start doing all of that stuff, I think all of that stuff is really great. I think it's all really hilarious.
Right.
Yeah, I think Rick getting bored by the purging is such a funny spin. The fact that he gets desensitized immediately, and everybody starts to have fun except him, and he was the one that was into it. Like, and I like all of that. I think all of that is really great.
I feel like this one falls into an old habit from season 1 that we talked about a lot, which is just reference the thing we're doing the whole time. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the same thing as the Inception one, where they're just like, we're doing Inception, Morty, so if it's stupid, then so is the movie. And and this one's very much like, we're purge, like literally the title is Look Who's Purging Now, and it's like, hey, we're doing the purge thing, so let's purge. And they're just like, that's the whole premise is. And this is like really the only episode this season that is like that feels like it is a real direct parody of a movie, you know. And I guess it's a little less direct, but this is like, after last season having a few of them, I don't think there's any others in this one that feel that in this season that feel that way.
Yeah, that sort of thing. When I was watching it, it's like part of me was kind of trying to put the whole purge idea in the back, just to the back of my mind, and just focus on, you know, the characters just being really funny, which they were more or less the thing I'm focusing more on, but they do constantly have to keep calling back to it's like, we're purging Morty, it's purging, like it's like, could you just say killing? Like, god damn, stop saying purging so much. Like it's just so blatantly obvious. Like, we get it, you hate the purge. Yes, it's a bad movie, like fucking come on. But it was kind of, you did get a bit of levity when it's like Morty, when they get to the lighthouse, and like I was really with Morty with that whole like struggling to stay awake while the dude's reading the screenplay shit, because that happened to me in college. Like, because when we have to someone has to read out loud their screenplay, and you're like, oh, fuck. Especially like
he says, "Oh, jeez."
Exactly. Like, he's thinking exactly like everyone has to think in a screenwriting like class, because you're like, fuck, I'm not in the mood to hear someone read this shit. But it's one of those things where it's like, this episode starts off, it does start so slow, but then it like really picks up, and the shit with Summer and Jerry, like that shit is fucking hilarious to me, because it's like because Summer is kind of being an asshole to Jerry, but at the same time Jerry's being Jerry and deserves it. It's like, oh yeah, like when like Jerry straight up asks, it's like, hey, how's it going or so, and she's like, you're holding me verbally hostage. What am I supposed to do with anything?
Right. I think all that Summer Jerry stuff is really, really funny. And I think it's real. Like when, like him begging her for money is so sad. But it is real. God, yeah. It is pretty real.
Right.
I like that about it. And I like
it's one of those things
when Morty calls on the phone. When Rick calls on the phone and he gives the phone to Morty, and Morty's trying to explain to Summer what to do, and Jerry's just convinced that she's on the phone with a friend that we've never heard of, right? And we later find out who the friend is, who's not even really a friend. But anyway, she and then like Morty just goes, "Holy shit, Dad, just shut the fuck up!" Like,
right. No, it's both her and Morty. Like he's like because Jerry's like, Teddy Davidson. Summer's like, what is that? Who the fuck is Teddy
Mason? Teddy Mason.
Or Teddy Mason. Teddy Mason? And Summer's like, Dad, who the fuck is Teddy Mason? Like, because I'm like,
and that's not revealed until the tag that it's like a pay line that you call to have someone talk to you, and then he wraps up a $700 bill talking to Teddy Mason.
And it's so sad when it kind of becomes sadder when they're like, yeah, if you call us enough times, maybe I'll call you, and it'll be about a $1.99 per hour or per minute or some shit. And it's like, they call you and still make you pay for it. What the fuck? And he got himself involved in that. Damn. And it was just so funny by the end when Beth like finds out about it, and she's like, get a job, Jerry.
Get a job. Like, and then my favorite part about that is that the first line she says in the next episode is "Get a job, Jerry."
That was so fucking. That was so fucking hilarious to me. I'm like, that's literally your first line into this
Yeah,
I
last
wrote that
episode
too.
from the last
I wrote that
Like,
too. It's pretty funny.
That's
it
so
was her
funny.
first and last line. Like, I fucking loved how they did that.
Yeah.
Like,
Should
that
we
was
talk about the
too
finale?
funny.
Is
Yeah,
that a
let's
good
get
segue?
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
210, The Wedding Squanchers. This is the one where the family goes to Bird Person and Tammy's wedding. So starts off with that. Jerry get a job after he's bragging about his cereal to milk ratio.
Right.
And how do you guys feel about this one? This one takes us to like a fun party, kind of like the end of season 1.
Right.
And yeah, so it's kind of got a similar vibe in a way to season 1 in the end of season 1, in that it's like, all right, let's let loose and hang out until, of course, everything goes wrong.
Right.
Yeah. How do you guys feel about Wedding Squanchers?
I really like this one. I like this one a lot. I actually kind of.
Oh, it's excellent.
I remember. Okay, so in my head, when watching this, I just remember the finale being something big, but I didn't. It wasn't until like I looked at the title and I was like, oh wait, this is the wedding one. I forgot all about this one, and like I forgot how big of a deal this one was when it aired.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it was such, what they do at the end is such a status quo change.
Yeah, big cliffhanger.
And right, and it's really, and again, that gap was huge. Like that time gap trying to figure out what was going on. It was a big gap. And I appreciate everything they do here. I think it's the right blend of funny, but there are a lot of really complex character things, character motivation stuff that goes on in the background. I really, really, really appreciate the scene where Jerry is trying to convince everyone to leave. I think that scene is really powerful, and I think it's the most heart this show has had so far.
Yeah.
The reaction we see from Rick and just kind of how he handles it, I think it works as a nice balance for his character in general. I really like this one. I like this one a lot.
Nice.
Oh yeah, it's definitely one of those moments where it calls back to what we were sort of building on from the first episode, going through the through line. Because the thing about it is that the first episode of the season establishes to us that even though Rick is kind of a jackass and just a pure asshole to Morty and Summer, he does deep down care, because like we saw close to the end of the first episode, is that he was willing to sacrifice himself and be stuck in like that interdimensional like thing forever just to save Morty. And here, by the end of the finale, he's literally like, okay, I'll let myself get arrested just so they can at least have a life, be able to have their own lives. Because, like Summer and Morty literally have not gotten to fully start. They're still teens, still basically kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's sort of what speaks the bit of the volumes for Rick, is that because we were at that point where he was like, I'm not going to care. Like, we literally start with the fact that he doesn't care for Birdman, even though it's like, no, he did. He truly did care for Birdman, the second Birdman or Bird Person. Damn, I call it
Birdman.
Like,
that's another cartoon that curses, man. We ain't there yet. You understand?
Right. But like, it's the thing with like Bird Person. The fact that Bird Person got killed by his wife, and Rick literally screamed out, "No!" Like, oh shit! Like, he clearly cared, even though he wants to say he didn't. Like,
that's a great moment.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I feel like the thing that was always, I feel like in this episode, it isn't that Rick doesn't care about Bird Person. It's that now that Bird Person has someone else in his life, like Bird Person's like the only friend we've seen Rick have in this show. You know what I mean? And so now that Bird Person's got someone else in his life, Rick's not going to go to the wedding because he's like, oh, someone's taking my only friend away from me. You know what I mean?
Right.
That feels like his motivation there, where he's just like, oh, I don't want to go to this wedding because this really upsets me. But he's of course not going to admit that. I'm not quite as high on this episode as you guys are. I do like where it got. I really like what you said, the stuff with the family on the little planet. And I like the stuff with Rick, like listening in on their conversation and him turning himself in. That is like, I love that as an end to the season. I think that's like a really great end. But I don't know, like, even though there are good moments in the wedding didn't, like, it just felt so ridiculous and chaotic. Like they were just throwing everything at the screen. They're like, all right, Squanchy's the Hulk now. And like, you know, Tammy's a secret agent and Squanchy's the Hulk. And it is fun, but it also just feels like everything in the episode felt so big and disjointed to me. I was like, all right, wedding, crazy weddings, like the wedding's going crazy. Tammy's a double agent. Squanchy's the Hulk. Like there's like a lot of laser firing going on. And then it's like, all right, let's find a new home. I like where it got. And also this episode, I think, has the thing that you were talking about, Tariq. I don't love the execution of the song at the end with the Hurt cover. I like the song. I like them covering Hurt. I don't know. It felt weird and out of place to me. Like the tonal shift, it feels like it shouldn't, because the episode naturally shifts the tone itself, especially having that conversation beforehand. But for whatever reason, that song felt weirdly out of place for me. It felt almost like they were trying too hard to like pack the emotional beat with it.
I agree a little bit. Go ahead, man.
I feel like, because I'll admit, when I was hearing it, it's like, I don't know, because I'm more used to the Johnny Cash Hurt, mainly because, you know, the Logan trailer is when I mainly heard it. I don't think it was the first time I heard
one of the best trailers of all time, that Logan trailer.
Right. Oh yeah,
it's great.
Like I'm more used to like Johnny Cash's cover of it, so to hear this other guy who's more younger singing it, it's like it's like they should have just used the Johnny Cash cover. If anything, I feel like Hurt is a good song, but this particular cover, I think, is what's throwing it, because it's like, this sounds like a young guy when it's like Rick's old. Johnny Cash is old.
Well, Johnny Cash had that voice.
So like, yeah, he had that gruff deepness that I feel would fit more to what Rick.
I'm trying to imagine it if it had been the Johnny Cash one. I wonder if anyone's mocked that up. That'd be interesting to hear. I bet they couldn't afford it. That's a popular song.
Yeah, that's possible.
I do. Yeah, you kind of got me thinking about that, because that was something I was thinking about when watching it. Was like, I don't know. I remember liking the moment, and I remember really liking the execution of it. But you're right. I didn't necessarily know how the song choice made me feel. But still, I still do appreciate, like you said, I appreciate where it went. And even like you said, yeah, the wedding stuff is really chaotic for that bit, right? With like, because all that shit with like Tammy and Squanchy, like that shit does happen like really, really fast. However, I think right before that is really, really good, because it is really essential to building Rick as a character. And when talking to you guys about the episode with Unity, I started thinking about this one, and I was like, oh, okay, you know what? This just kind of made that one a little better, because as you guys were talking to me about his vulnerability and not being able to open up, that is why when he sees his friend happy with somebody, he finally flips the switch. And he says, you know what?
That's good.
This is my new life. I am going to open up. And right when he does that, that's when everything bad starts to happen. And I think that's really interesting. I think that's real. I think it's really interesting how they did that, and how they implemented it into the story and this episode. And right after all of that stuff happens with like all the lasers and stuff, they do a couple quick gags about them trying to find a different planet. There's where they go and everything's on a cob and shit, which is
I like that.
Wow.
I like the cob joke.
I can't get over that, because it's like, what the hell is wrong with it all being on a cob? Like,
it was a complete deal breaker, even though it's like a sustainable place to live. They're like, we can't live where everything's on a cob.
But I think, but yeah, after they do all of that, the tone is set for the rest
Right.
of the episode. I think it might
Yeah,
be the
yeah.
last 10 minutes. You know what I mean? Um,
Right.
and I think they do a really good job with it. I think there might, and they still find a way to sprinkle in some laughs without feeling a little out of place. I think the only time it feels a little bit out of place is when Rick is calling to snitch on himself and he like says that he's Jerry and he's like, I
Yeah.
like furry balls. Like I was
Yep.
like, yeah, I think that is like borderline. You know how like we went the whole episode, son, but I'm doing it now. You know how like Family Guy would try to
Right.
do like they'll do heart. They'll try to like do heart somehow, but they'll always just kind of slip a joke in there because they aren't really comfortable being vulnerable. That's kind of what that felt like. You know what I mean? Like in that
Right.
particular moment, I was like,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
other
that's
than
fair.
that, I appreciate the rest of it. I think it's really dope.
Yeah. I think that joke fits in with Jerry. I mean, with Rick, because it's like, again, it's fucking Jerry. Like he deserves that.
No, I feel you.
Fair.
Like, so I think that's just sort of my thing. But I do think like the episode I feel like the episode builds properly to everything, giving like to Rick giving himself up for his family, and because it's like, and I really like the moment between Rick and Morty, but when Rick is like leaving, but not officially saying it's like, yeah, I'm leaving. Like I really like how Morty steps up to be like, look, I can take it. I can accept that you're gonna go and be gone and leave us. But like, if you hurt my mom, that's it, man. Like,
Yeah.
like
That is a good moment.
I can't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really like that moment because
Yeah.
it kind of builds a bit to the idea of Morty kind of being able to step up a little bit from this season, like
Right.
being able to stand up to Rick a bit, just a bit, not so much so, but still enough.
It's fair. Cool. Yeah, it's like I especially like where this episode ends given the season before it. Like even if this isn't my favorite episode of the season, I think it ends in the right place and it does the right thing with the characters, and it's I think it's a really strong, I think where they end the season is really strong for I'm just a broken record now. It's a strong ending for what came before it. Should we do our rankings? Do you want to talk about our general thoughts of season 2 before we jump into our rankings?
Yeah. How did you feel about season 2, Man of 1,000 Thoughts? Our guest.
Personally, going back on this season, it's so jarring because it's like I kind of was feeling slight fatigue of Rick and Morty in a sense, because going back to what Johnny was saying with about close enough, not close enough, fuck, solar opposites, damn, that's what I was trying to say. Like the fact that with solar opposites, it's basically Rick and Morty, but without having to really think too hard about everything going on, like not too much meticulous like plotting and all that.
Right.
Like I was started feeling that fatigue. But going back to season 2, it's like there is the clear meticulous plotting, but it doesn't feel as ham-fisted, you know what I mean? Like seasons 3 and 4, like beyond season 2, all felt like they're really trying to throw in so many like inner jokes, inner workings of the characters, and hidden references and all this and that, where it's like, okay, I gotta be keeping my mind going a mile a minute just to keep up with you. But season 2 kind of felt a bit refreshing. It's like I do have to keep slightly on my toes, but not enough that it's like it's unenjoyable or it feels like work. It feels more like I can still very much just casually come back and enjoy this season. And because this season overall, I can't really I can't name like a bad episode. I feel like every episode is relatively good.
Right.
And maybe some are maybe not as good, not as good as others, but it's still in the category of good. And I think
Right.
that's something a lot of shows in general or seasons in general would be rough to be able to emulate that, to be able to just be like, yeah, we have no bad episodes. Maybe some not as strong as others, but just nothing in here is like bad. And that's just something I really appreciate the most about season 2. It's like I don't look at nothing in here to be like this sucks and because this is before it really. This is like pre the takeoff for Rick and Morty in general in terms of popularity.
It blew up between this and the third season for sure.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's what like I think that's what's enjoyable is that it was keeping itself small enough that it didn't need to blow up or more or less there was nothing blow upable, I guess you could say,
right,
in a sense of what was happening. It's still intriguing and very interesting and having a lot of these very strong character moments. And that's sort of the thing I like the most about this is that it gives so much to the characters while not making them feel tedious in a sense, except for Jerry. But Jerry, like he's Jerry, he's supposed to be that guy.
Right.
It's by season 3 when it's like, okay, I can't fucking stand you now. Like I already didn't like you, but now it's like I wish they kept your ass out, or like I wish you stayed divorced. Like fuck. So, but like that's just sort of that thing. Like I think season 2 ultimately, I don't know. I kind of do want to probably call it my favorite. I feel like it's one of those things. If I can always come back to this. Whereas with maybe 3 and 4, I feel like I probably could cherry pick the ones I want to watch versus wanted to sit through the whole thing.
I'm very excited to keep going through 3 and 4, but I have a feeling that this will ultimately be my favorite season. Going into this rewatch, I was very much my ranking was the order of release. It was 1, 2, 3, 4 in that order. Like that was kind of in my brain. I was like, I like season 1 the best. And that's partially because I have such a strong nostalgic connection to season 1. Like I was so stoked on the show when it came out. Rewatching, season 2 is the strongest season between 1 and 2 for sure. As much as I love a lot of stuff in season 1, season 2 is like mostly firing on all cylinders the whole time. Very few things that I have to criticize. Like I have some things, but it's so funny. The sci-fi premises are so fresh and have such unique spins on them. They don't do like an overt aspect like parody. They don't parody things too intensely, and they do really good character work. It's like a really great evolution of Rick and Morty from season 1 to season 2. I think it's going to be my favorite. And it's, even though I think maybe weirdly, I don't know if my favorite episodes of the whole show are in this season. Like, I think maybe I think my favorite episodes are in season 3 and season 1, although a season 2 episode might sneak in there, but I think it's the most consistent, strongest season of the show for sure.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like, just in comparison to the first season, I think the highs of season 2 are way like mountains higher than the highs of season 1, and I think the lows in season 2 aren't even really lows. Like I'm looking at the episode I have at number 10, and it is still one that I would watch again. You know what I mean? Like they're all good. Like I enjoyed all of these. They all had really interesting concepts, and they even when they don't say interesting things, there's still enjoyment to be found, no matter which way you look at it. Whereas in season 1, when you get to the lower ones, like the pilot, I don't think I'm gonna watch that pilot ever again. Like, you know what I mean? But yeah, I like this one a lot, and this was always. Well, I only really cared about Rick and Morty when there were only 2 seasons, so I would always say that this was the better one. And I'm pretty sure I saw all of the third, so I remember liking this one more than the third. But it's been a while, so I'm excited to look again.
My favorite episode of the whole show is in season 3, so I'm really eager to.
It ain't Pickle Rick, is it?
No, but I think Pickle Rick is super underrated, so we'll talk about that next week.
Underrated?
Yeah.
For what it's trying to say, not what happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense.
The funny, we'll talk about this next week, but the funny thing is that Pickle Rick was a meme before the episode aired. Like it was from the trailer. that it was already a meme. So going into Pickle Rick, I was like, oh, I was not excited. I was like, I was already annoyed by Pickle Rick
Right.
going into the episode. And then at the end, I was kind of like, oh, they really did something with this. So
Right.
that's how I felt. That's how I
Yeah.
felt about Pickle Rick.
Yeah.
I'm infinitely annoyed at Pickle Rick, the concept, but I like Pickle Rick, the episode. That's my take.
There we go. Yeah.
Anyways, let's do our rankings. We got a little sneak peek of season 3 analysis there.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go first for the rankings, starting with 10. Number 10, Interdimensional Cable 2, Tempting Fate. Number 9, Look Who's Purging Now. 8, Get Schwifty. 7, The Ricks Must Be Crazy. 6, Wedding Squanchers. 5, Mortynight Run. 4, Autoerotic Assimilation. 3, Big Trouble in Little Sanchez. 2, Total Rickall. And 1, A Rickle in Time.
Wow, our order. This is the most jumbled our order has ever been.
I knew it's gonna be real. I knew this was gonna be real different.
Nothing lines up.
You had me like the first two, and then you kind of switched it and then for like fucking 8 and 7, it's like okay, it's like, okay, but then 6 and 5 going, it was like
hey, we'll see. I think this is the fun of this, though. Like, we'll, you know, because ultimately we all just talked about how much we love this season, and it's like going to be such a different order. It's really interesting. Who wants to go next, Mann or Tariq?
I'll go, but now I'm in talking about the episodes and looking at my order.
You're thinking about changing them?
I'm doing some live switching.
Ooh, live switching.
Live switching.
I was changing while we were talking about them. I changed a couple around.
I gotta start doing that. All right. Where I got number 10, I got Mortynight Run. Number 9, I got The Ricks Must Be Crazy. Number 8, I got Get Schwifty. Number 7, I got Big Trouble in Little Sanchez. Number 6, I got Interdimensional Cable 2, Tempting Fate. Damn, I'm moving them live. What number was I just at?
You were on 6.
Did you say 6?
I say 6. I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway,
I think you said interdimensional cable 2 for 6.
Okay, so number 5 would be. Yeah, you're right. That is what I'm doing. Number 5 would be autoerotic assimilation. Number 4 is Total Rickall. Number 3 is A Rickle in Time. Number 2 is Look Who's Purging Now. And number 1 is The Wedding Squanchers.
Damn.
It's a nasty order.
Yeah.
That's a very different order. Dang.
Let's hear it. What you got, man?
Okay, for me, number 10, Interdimensional Cable 2. Number 9, Get Schwifty. Number 8, Look Who's Purging Now. Number 7, Big Trouble in Little Sanchez. Number 6, The Ricks Must Be Crazy. Number 5, Mortynight Run.
Mortynight Run.
4, Mortynight Run. Damn, I knew I had that flipped. Number 4, Total Rickall. Number 3, Autoerotic Assimilation. Number 2, A Rickle in Time. And number 1, The Wedding Squanchers.
Wow.
We matched up a little bit.
Mann and I are so similar except for Wedding Squanchers. And you guys both have Wedding Squanchers at number 1, which was like, I'm going to be honest, Wedding Squanchers was even lower on my list until we talked about it.
We somehow helped bring it up.
You did help bring it up. It made me realize that there were certain aspects of the episode that I do really like, and I do like it where it ended for the season finale. But I still think it's a weaker episode of the season. That's so interesting that it's both of your favorites.
Number 1.
And you guys both had Big Trouble in Little Sanchez a lot lower than I did. It's funny, man. Our lists are so close. Other than that, it feels like ours are so similar.
Yeah, because our number 8 and I think it's either our number 9 and 8 are switched, or number 8 and 7 are switched.
That's so interesting.
I was like, oh, that's so close. Like, that's so close. Jesus Christ.
It's funny going in though. Like, I I was so impressed with A Rickle in Time as the premiere like of the season. And I was like, wow, not only is this building off of the events of the season finale, but this is so funny, such a cool sci-fi concept. And as much as I like season 2, nothing quite hit that bar for me for A Rickle in Time. Total Rickall is really good too though. But yeah, it's so interesting. And this is a more fun one because we like every episode. All three of us like all of this.
Yeah.
But it is funny what we hold most important when we're ranking our favorites.
Right.
Oh yeah.
I think what did it for me was that, like when I said earlier, I felt like the Wedding Squanchers had the most heart than the rest of the episodes. So I think that's what made it my number one. I felt like I was like, yeah, you know what? I like when
and it's funny. I generally, like we talked about, I think we talked about this in one of the last things we recorded. I can't remember if it was in Rick and Morty season 1 or if it was the episode that will come out way in the future that we haven't announced yet.
Right.
But generally, I also gravitate towards the heart, like the ones with the most heart. And for whatever reason, season 2 of Rick and Morty is just so relentlessly funny that like really took precedent for the first time in any of these rankings we've ever done. Right. Like in all my Futurama rankings, it was heart. You know, it was always up there. But you're right. The end of Wedding Squanchers does probably have the most heart in any of these episodes.
I think for me, since I put A Rickle in Time at 2 and Squanchers at 1, like for me, it was like, I feel like these two have to be together because it's basically the circle for them. It's like the first episode, A Rickle in Time sets us up on the idea of Rick being more vulnerable, and the second one, and Squanchers basically follows through on all of it from everything the season was building towards, in a sense,
right?
With Rick, like being able to because it's basically the coming full circle. Like he sacrificed himself in the first episode of season 2, and he sacrifices himself in the finale of season 2. And I think that's ultimately why I feel like
that's
it's like you need both. It's like they come the full circle. They thread the needle.
Hey, properly. You know what? A Rickle in Time does have heart. You're right. That's why it's my number one. It's because Rick sacrifices himself at the end. Yeah, no, but that is totally a good point.
What I meant.
that is a really good point, man. I didn't actually think about that. How he sacrifices himself for Morty in the first one, and he sacrifices himself for the family's sake in the last one. That's a smart connection, and I think a great place to end our podcast for the day.
All right.
Yeah, this is a good one, man. You're a great guest. This was great. We're gonna have you back. This was a really good episode.
I can't wait for that. This is really fun.
Some really great thought-provoking content. Look what you made us do. We thought.
Man, why don't you
spare a few of my 1,000 thoughts for y'all?
Man, why don't you plug whatever you want to plug, and then I'll do our sign off.
Yeah.
Just be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Man of 1,000 Thoughts. That's MANN of 1,000 Thoughts. Also, follow me on Twitter at Man Lightfoot. That's MANN Lightfoot. And just remember, it's just a thought.
All right, and with that, let's sign off. I want to say thanks to Michael Yunez for producing and editing our podcast. Thanks to Kerrifique for our artwork. Thanks to Jakeneutron for our theme song. Thanks to Tariq and Mann for talking about Rick and Morty with me today.
Aww.
And you did the same thing in the last one. And with that, f you guys. See you later.
Peace among worlds.
Hey, Spotify people, you can't see it, but it's happening.